Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council. Mayor, Skip Henderson. City Manager, Isaiah Hughley. Pops Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Charmaine Crabb, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Walker Garrett, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large Counselor. John House, Post 10 at-large Counselor. Sandra Davis, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Welcome to the January 29th council meeting. Today's meeting is a work session. We've got a lot of things on the agenda that we're going to be able to discuss and allow the council to get updated on. But we're going to start as we always do. I'm going to ask Pastor Adrian Chester to come forward and bless us today. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. God of our weary years, God who has heard all of our silent tears, we stand here this day realizing that it has been you that has brought us thus far along the way. And so, God, we ask now, as our city officials deliberate the business of this community, that, God, you will prick our hearts, that our minds will be focused on your justice and your equity for all people. We ask now that you bless those who have offered themselves to serve your people, that they will be a voice for the voiceless, that your will and your kingdom shall be done here on earth as it is in heaven. Bless the children who are gathered here today, and let us realize that our decisions will impact generations to come, and to be faithful towards your call as instructed in Micah chapter 6, that we do justice, we love mercy, and we walk humbly with you, for you are our God. It's in the name of Jesus we do pray, and we all said, amen.
Before you get away from the rostrum, I just want to thank you for your leadership at Greater Bellwood Baptist, but more than that, you're always present in the community. You're so active, and you give of your time throughout this entire community, and I just want to recognize you for that and tell you thank you for your efforts.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. All right, we're very fortunate. We've got some the AB Honor Roll from Georgetown Elementary, led by their Principal Scott, and they were a little shy when I was talking to them, but I'm confident that they are going to really belt out the Pledge of Allegiance. Y'all come forward, and we'll get ready to say the pledge. Y'all hold it in the middle, that way we'll hear you. There we go.
You want to go in the middle?
Good morning, Columbus, Georgia City Council. My name is Tommy Mullins. We bring you greetings on behalf of Georgetown Elementary, where Mr. Kevin Scott is our principal.
I don't think that's on. We'll do that. Why don't I tell you, y'all, let's do the pledge, and they'll get the mic fixed, and then we'll get to meet all of you. You ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Y'all did speak up. Now, tell us your name and what grade you're in, how old you are.
My name is Tommy Mullins. I'm in 5th grade.
I'm Amiris Colquitt. I'm in 5th grade.
I'm Reese Daniels in 5th grade. I'm Courtneyana Cobb. I'm in 5th grade.
I'm Jada Lovejoy in 5th grade.
I'm Kiana Hunter, and I'm 5th grade.
I'm Zaria Perry, and I'm in 5th grade.
Hi, good morning. I am Jakia Colquitt, and I am in 5th grade.
I'm Kennedy Ford, and I am in 5th grade. We thank you for the opportunity to be invited to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, and we hope to make this great city proud.
Y'all did an amazing job. Y'all give them another hand. And you have some folks with you. Would y'all want to let us know who you are? We've got Principal Scott, and I know the Scholastic coaches. Thank y'all. Y'all come introduce yourselves too. You don't have to give your age, but we'll just...
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin Scott, the proud principal of Georgetown Elementary School.
Nina Gordy, academic coach. Kenethia Cook, academic coach.
Y'all have done an amazing job with these young folks, and we thank you so much for your efforts within our school system. And guys, great job. We'll get you back again sometime. Thank y'all. All right, the minutes were included in your agenda for the January 22nd meeting. I'll need an motion second to approve. Any questions, any additions or deletions to the minutes? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. All right, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'll yield to the assistant city attorney for the first, well, I'm sorry, you don't have anything. I'm sorry, I thought I'm not paying attention. Mr. Mayor, thank you, and to the members of council, good morning. I've got 7 items on the work session agenda, and let me just make a couple of announcements prior to getting into the work session agenda. We've got 7 items today. We may or may not get to all of them, depending on the amount of discussion that takes place. A couple of things you may have expected to see, we've not listed, and they will come at a later date. Codes enforcement update, I think it was requested by Councilor Walker Garrett. We are going to bring that back at a future meeting. We've got to make sure that we pull the Columbus Police Department, CPD, and Special Inspections and Codes together, because inspections and codes enforce violations related to the property in terms of it being habitable and so forth. But CPD, the police department, will enforce other things, illegal activity and so forth going on the property, and we want to make sure that they are both in their lanes and working together to make sure that the property is what the neighbors and what we want it to be. So we'll bring that back, Councilor Garrett, at a later date, and I did speak to you about that. Also, the entertainment district, where there potentially could be open carry related to alcohol in portions of Uptown, we're going to bring that back at a later date as well. There's been discussion going on and many meetings with various stakeholders, Uptown Columbus, and we are going to bring that back at a later date. And the final announcement has to do with Severe Weather Preparedness Week. And Severe Weather Preparedness Week is February 4th through 8th. And so during Severe Weather Preparedness Week, February 4th through February 8th, Georgians are encouraged to learn about possible severe weather threats and how to prepare for them. Each day will have a different focus during the week of February 4th through 8th. Monday, February 4th would be family preparedness NOAA Weather Radio Day. NOAA meaning standing for acronym for National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and that's why I use the acronym NOAA. Tuesday, February 5th is thunderstorm safety. That is what the focus will be on that day. Wednesday, February 6th, tornado safety drill to occur at 9 a.m. Thursday, February 7th is lightning safety. Friday, February 8th, flood safety. The entire week of February 4th through 8th is Severe Weather Preparedness Week, and each day will have a different focus. Those are the announcements. And so with that, Mr. Mayor and Council, we have our Deputy City Manager, Pam Hodge, at the podium, and she is going to provide an update on the Government Center. We've talked about options, and so she's here to talk to us today.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. What we want to just spend a few minutes is talking about the options of where we go from here with the Government Center. We had a lot of discussion about the options, and we want to make sure that we have captured the options from Council that you want us to provide additional detail on. We have been focusing on the restoration of the Government Center. At this time, we have some of those offices that have been relocated back last week, and so we're moving forward with the restoration. We're also moving forward with the RFP for the stairwell pressurization, the fire alarm system, as well as looking at options of a sprinkler system. So we hope to have that completed in February, and also the restoration to be completed in February. So this presentation talks about where we go from here, what do we focus on as far as the options for the Government Center. Council approved as part of the bond issue that was recently done to do that assessment, and we just want to make sure that the options that we're capturing is what Council wants us to consider. So we asked Heck Burdishaw and 2WR, who have participated in the entire process, starting with the Mayor's Commission on the Government Center, and so we asked them for a proposal to look at those options. So it is a partnership between both Heck Burdishaw and 2WR. They are also providing a consultant with Newt Aaron and Ryan Clemens, as well as a judicial consultant as far as the space assessment for the judicial side. So this includes all of those. It will be through one contract through Heck Burdishaw, but it has the partners that I've outlined. So first of all, the option one, which is complete demolition of the wings and the garage, a new judicial center, and then renovation of the tower for administration, and a new parking garage. So this would be option one that they provide additional detail on. I've also handed out their complete proposal to you, which outlines the scope of all the deliverables that they will provide for each of these options. Option two, again, is a complete demolition of the tower, the wings, and the garage on the existing site, a new judicial center, a new city admin building, and a new parking garage. So this would be really starting from scratch on the existing site. The third option would be a new site for a portion of the offices. So it would be complete demolition of the tower, the wings, and the garage, a new judicial center with a broader footprint and fewer floors, a new judicial parking garage, and then an administration building on a new site to be determined. This study does not include reviewing options for a new site, but it would be a greenfield site in another location. And again, it would be an on-grade parking for the administration building at that new location. Surface parking. Surface parking. Surface parking?
No parking garage.
No parking garage. And then the fourth option would be all existing functions of the government center would move to new buildings at a new site, new judicial center, new admin building, and parking garage or site parking as determined by the capacity. So those were the four options that through our discussions we heard from council, and those are the options that Heck Burtishaw and 2WR will proceed forward with reviewing. We want to make sure that we have captured what council wants us to look at. So if there's something that you saw here that those are not the options that you want us to review, we need to know that. And we'll be bringing back the contract with Heck Burtishaw at the next council meeting. So if there are adjustments that we need to make to those options, if you could let us know. And then I also just want to go through.
We've got a question from Councilor House.
The site for the new judicial building and the various options presented, is that specified, or are you looking at, because I know at one time we had a discussion, it would be like where the plaza is, you know, where the next to the tower. But are they going to look at other places like vacant lots near the jail or something like that? Is that part of what they're doing or not?
Well, I don't think they are looking for sites. I think we could propose sites to them.
Okay.
And it could be property that the city already owns, and certainly any site option or options that we provide to them to just take a look at beyond the current site would simply just be options, so that you know that there potentially could be another option.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
And just from my perspective, this is to try to provide you, the council, who will be making this decision ultimately, with as much information as we can possibly give. So any kind of option that also takes into account the possibility of relocating this to another site, that depends on a couple of things. One, of course, the cost and the feasibility of actually moving that. But I think it opens up the door for other benefits if it played out right. Maybe you'd sell this piece of property. It'd be a commercially very attractive piece of property if it was feasible. And then I think you'd have an opportunity, if you're going to relocate a judicial building and an administrative building, to look at the potential economic impact of putting that sort of critical mass of individuals in an area that might attract restaurants, might attract retail. So the idea is to try to get you some numbers associated with each one of these different options, so that we can narrow it down and begin to really kind of get down in the weeds on, if it's off-site, where, what would the possible impact on that community be, what would the total cost be on tearing it down versus repurposing. So this is simply an idea to give you the four general options so that you have some numbers to go along with that.
So before you go to the budget, Deputy City Manager, I don't want to be necessarily redundant, especially to those around the table, but I do want to be redundant for those watching by television. So I'm going to ask you to go back through and quickly highlight each option again, because it's not a long deal, and see if there are any questions around the table, because we will bring back something at the next meeting, and we wanted to do this to allow you and the public 2 weeks to see this or digest what has been presented, contact you if they've got questions about the options, that you can direct them to us, but we wanted to make sure that all are knowledgeable, have input, are involved, because this is a big deal. It's something that's going to exist beyond our lifetime, those of us around the table, maybe. Be careful. So would you just?
Well, if it doesn't, it better be because they all live about another 100 years.
Would you just do that again for us?
Sure. So option one would be complete demolition of the wings and the parking garage, a new judicial center on the existing site, and complete renovation of the tower for administration. And it would also include a new parking garage. So that would be option one. Option two is, again, on the existing
Paul,
site.
Go back. So, renovate tower for city administration, reuse of structure only. There would be a new judicial center, and we would keep the tower.
Yes,
The
keep the
new
tower.
judicial center would be where the wings are.
That's correct.
And we would basically gut the tower, leave the steel and the concrete, and renovate, and then reuse that structure.
That's correct.
That's number one. And then new parking garage
On the site.
on the site where with the wings, because in the tower, we have a parking structure below, but it'd be parking garage on the site.
On the site. They would demolish the wings and the garage and place the new parking garage and the new judicial center on the existing site, complete restoration of the government center tower.
Okay.
So that would be option one.
Okay, and they would be able to demo the garage because the garage is not underneath the government center, it's
It's really underneath the wings.
underneath the wings. I'm doing this for a reason.
No, sir, I understand. This is, Councilor Crabb has a question.
Do we have issues with the wings? Do we have the same type of issues that we have with the tower, with the wings? Are those buildings, do they have the maintenance and the
They do, because the infrastructure that supports the tower also supports the wings. The wings are only a couple of stories, obviously, but when we have problems with the chillers, it impacts the wings. We have the old elevators, it's all the systems.
Okay.
And so, but the thing is, we need a judicial center. And that's how we get to that, because of, over the years, the growth in the government. And so that's why the wings are included in this.
Okay.
That all? Thank you. Yeah, no, I think this is very good to kind of go through and make sure that people understand what those little short sentences
Yes.
mean.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if there are no questions around the table regarding option one, we'll go to option two.
Sure. So option two would be complete demolition of everything on the existing site. That would include the tower, the wings, and the garage.
So a clean site.
Clean site, clean existing site. And it would be all new. New admin, new judicial, new parking garage on the existing site. So we would stay in the same location, but none of the buildings or the parking structure would remain, and we would basically start over on the existing site.
So we would then have two buildings on the existing site. One would be the judicial center, the courts, is that right?
That's correct.
And then the second building on the existing site would be the administration building, where the mayor and city manager and HR and all of everything else would be.
That's correct.
And then a new parking garage.
Right.
Okay? That's all new, everything.
All new existing site is
Yeah.
option two. So option three brings in a new site for the admin building. So it's, again, a complete demolition of the tower, the wings, and the garage. So basically a new site, or a clean site on the existing site. The judicial center would remain on the existing site, and a new parking garage. So the only thing on the existing site in option 3 would be the judicial center, and the city administration building would be on a new site in a different location with surface parking provided for the admin building. So option 3, complete demolition of the existing site and only have the judicial center and a parking garage on the existing site, with the admin building in a different location.
So a different location, it could be across the street, it could be in the Liberty District, it could be next to this building out here, it could be, I'm not saying we're considering any of those, but it will be somewhere else. And I know there's been, when we were considering moving the mayor and city manager to this building here, there were some, or we had outcry from downtown that they felt the mayor's office and city manager's office should be downtown. So we're aware of that. Pardon? Yeah, just I don't know all of why, but I think it's the history, and typically in any city, the mayor's office is in the heart or center or in downtown. You know, typically, and many of them will have a dome on the building where the mayor's office is located. So I think it's tradition. But they wanted the mayor's office downtown. Okay.
Okay. And so option 4 would be a new site for all the facilities. The existing functions of what's in the government center would be in new buildings on a new site. So that's a new judicial center, a new admin building, and a parking garage or surface parking, depending on the location, for the 4th option.
Would be on a site somewhere uptown or
Liberty District
possibly,
or here
yeah,
or
another site.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to, I guess, start the dialogue on this. For me to look at or determine which option I would like to support, I would like to see some numbers associated with each phase. Is that something you're going to bring back, or do you have those today? Or?
No, that would come back at a later date, and what she's going to go over next would be the budget that's going to be used to further outline these options. We don't want our architects to go to work on these options, and then you say, no, we don't like any of those options. We at least like to know that, you know, if there's a 5th option or you want to take number 4 off the table altogether, we don't waste any time on them. And that's basically why we are sharing them with you today. Right. And then they'll put texture to each and cost and all of everything else. When we come back to you, we'll say that these are the 4 options that you heard about on January 29th, and then all the details, the specifics that would go with each of those options.
Will we be able to talk through, well, some have said that the government center structure is sound. It's not going anywhere. So if we remodel around that structure, it would be viable. Some have said long-term, if we don't put the right systems in, it would be just a dinosaur as far as heating costs, cooling costs, those type of utilities. So will we hear some things similar to that discussion?
What they're planning to do is look at these 4 options, provide you schematics, provide you details of the 4 options, provide you costs of the 4 options. In order to do that, they're bringing on CGL, which is the judicial consultant. That's their specialty, to look at the space, to identify how much space is needed for the judicial facility, and then they can provide that feedback to you as far as, does the tower provide the space that's needed for the judicial, which I think at this point we know in all of these scenarios, the judicial is in a separate building, not located in the tower. So the tower would be for administrative offices, and they would provide that sort of detail. At this point, we have not asked them to look at the structural soundness of the government center. That would be someone else that would provide that type of a report.
But I think to Councilor Allen's question, when he talks about structural soundness, are you talking about, are we able to keep the shell? Because I think when they talk about renovating, the shell would go away and you would go down to the steel and the concrete floors and so forth. But
Yeah, the steel and the concrete are solid. They're not, we don't have a problem with that side of it. It's the utility of it, the air conditioning, the plumbing, electrical.
all that would have to go.
Yeah, all that's got to be replaced.
yes.
So my question is, what's the difference in us retaining the building and retrofitting all those things we talked about versus just starting all over? Because, I mean, we're here at almost 50 years of the use of that building, and I wouldn't want the city to get 10 years down the road and start having other problems with a building and saying, well, what we really should have done in 2019 was X.
Well, let us talk to them about that, because Councilor Allen, I think it's probably necessary that we do that to answer that question for members of this community, because I'm sure they have that question.
I mean, that's just something that comes up in my layman's mind on the building, not necessarily someone has mentioned that to me, but I guess it's come up through a lot of conversations.
Because I've heard that question before.
Yeah.
And I think we need to answer the question so that when we get ready to do this, that it doesn't come up at that time and, well, you should have. And so I think that's a good observation.
I think it's a good exercise to go through.
I do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilor Huff.
Good morning. Thank you for the update. Is the property there on surface parking outside included in all of this? It's on the street, 9th Street side?
The ninth?
In these options, they will be looking at the parking garage to service or the surface parking to service the facility, and they will include any parking that's available as far as on 9th Street or on street.
Okay, will we be adding a garage there on 9th Street, or would be just the same?
At this point, I believe 9th Street would remain a surface
That's correct.
parking as is. We would not, construction would not be taking place on that side of 9th Street.
Okay.
On the south side of 9th Street.
Yeah, in the preliminary schematics that they did, it did not consider a parking garage on 9th Street.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Thomas.
There's several questions that immediately come to my mind, and one of the biggest ones is, will the consultants, let me back up. I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional contractor. I'm not a professional architect. I'm not a professional any of those kinds of things. And so I'm going to depend very heavily on those people who are the professionals to advise me and give me information about what we may want to do. And there are lots of questions that I have heard in the last several months as we've been talking about this, that at some point, before I make the decision of what we're going to do, I need answers to. For example, one of the options is to move the judicial center to another place, wherever that may be. I want the law enforcement folks to tell me and talk to me about what that means. If we move it somewhere else, how will that impact getting prisoners or getting folks from the jail to the new judicial center? How much is that going to cost? What is that going to entail? Is that going to mean we need all of those kinds of questions? I don't even know all the questions to ask, okay? The other thing that I'm very interested in is no matter which one of these we do, it's going to be a multi-month proposition. I've heard anywhere up to 2.5 years before we get all of this done. I hope to goodness that's an overestimation. So what do we do with our people in the meantime? That's one of the questions I'd like to have answered. I want to know from our judges, what do they need? I want to know from our district attorney, what do they need? What do they need in the form of storage? What do they need in the form of office space? What are they? All of those kinds of questions. Mm-hmm. And I also want to know, I want the public to have an opportunity to have some input, have some public meetings and talk about, here are all of the variables and what are we going to do. One of the things I've heard is, if we're going to build a new admin building, what about moving all those folks that are in the annex down on 10th Street into this admin building? And if we do that, what does that mean? What does that mean to the 10th Street building? What does that mean? All of those kinds of questions, I'm going to need some answers to before we get to that. And the other piece that I want you just to tuck back in the back of your mind and think about, I would like for us to look for a financial advisor. Someone maybe from GMA or HCCG that can say to us, if you do a SPLOS, this is what it is going to take. If you do a bond, this is what it's going to take. If you do have a yard sale, this is what it's going to take. Because that's another issue that I am not a professional at. And so I need a lot of information in order to make some of these kinds of decisions. I think that the more that we can do that ahead of time, some of the other issues that come up will be handled. I think that from my knowledge of the people that you have mentioned that are currently advising us, the Aaron and Clements and Associates and the Heck Burdishaw folks are excellent professional consultants. And I'm glad that we are moving in that direction. I think, however, there may be additional professionals that we as a council may want to investigate. I do think that whatever decision we make is going to be something that will impact this community for a long time to come. And I don't want to enter into it lightly and unadvisedly. I want to make sure that we've got as much solid information as we can. And it's going to cost us to get that information. I understand that. And I'm prepared to pay those professionals to give us that advice. I have all of the respect in the world for our employees. However, I think that we need additional professional advice. Do we need a project manager? Yeah, I think we probably do. How do all of those kinds of questions. So I do think that we need to make sure that those things are in place before you ask me which one of these options do I want. I want some of option 1 and some of option 2 and some of option 3, and then we'll go to lunch at the Chinese restaurant, But at any rate, those are some of my concerns. I want us to get as much professional help as we can so that we make the decision that's going to make the best use of our money, our space. We have property all over town. What do we, is there some other place that we ought to, all of those kinds of questions.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Certainly.
Thank you, Councilor Thomas, for all of that and that guidance, direction. Let me just say that we're going to capture all that you just said and make sure that we put a check mark by all those things that you've pointed out. But we want to solicit from each of the council members any questions that you have, observations that you have. If you get them from your constituents, send them to us, because we want to make sure that we answer all of those questions. And when we, at the end of the day, if someone comes after we've gone through all of this with a question, I'm going to be trying to figure out where were you, because we want everybody involved. But to one of your points about you want to hear from the judges and CPD, you want to know what works for them, we wouldn't dare do it without the judges and the jail, the sheriff, the police chief, and all of them, because they got to live with it, in a judicial center. So they are going to be, when it comes forward, you should know that it's something they've signed off on, much like the court management system. I would anticipate when we did the court management system, you saw them all lined up here together to say, we support the court management system. That's what I would expect when we bring forward a judicial center, that they're all lined up here together so that and the public will know that they're all on board and this is what they've signed off on. So we're going to do that, but we want your questions and the questions from your constituents, and if a citizen has something and they don't want to go through a city councilor, I would invite them to call 311, and I'm going to ask staff to make notes of all questions that come in related to the construction of a renovation or new construction of a government center, judicial center, or an administration building, so that we can capture all of that. Because we need to do it right, because we got to live with it for many years to come.
And I think one of the things we're pretty good at in this government is our public meetings, to give the public an opportunity to come and ask questions and listen to presentations. And I would hope that we will have many of those. I think if we don't do that, the public is not going to be supportive of this, and we may find ourselves in pretty deep trouble. So you guys are great at doing that and conducting those kinds of meetings and so forth, and I would hope that we would have several all along the way at various steps during the process, so that we can get that input from the community of what kinds of things they think we need, and just so that they can hear and ask questions themselves. We've got to involve the public in this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Thomas. And to that end, I think it was always assumed that, or not assumed, but it was always part of the plan that particularly the relocation, housing our employees so that there's absolutely no interruption of service delivery is going to be a part of this. But I tell you, the part that I really am glad you brought up is the financial advice we should be seeking. I know the city manager and I have talked to individuals. Nothing's off the table. We want to be as creative as possible. We've talked to people, had just very superficial conversations about historic tax credits, about opportunity zones. I mean, we're going to look at the most economical way to drive this project. But the facts are that we're going to end up in where not everybody's going to agree on the same style. So our goal is to make sure that you guys have every piece of information and everything that you've mentioned. I promise you, we're going to try to work through and make sure you get that, so. All right, Councilor House.
It's kind of a restatement of the first question, but if we go with option one and we keep the tower and we're going to build a new judicial center someplace, I think that's option one, right? I do think as part of this whole process, we should make sure we talk to the judges and the sheriff, the marshal, whoever else is involved in that. But the current site might not be the best place for the judicial center since we're going to build a new one anyway. And so if we can mix and match, as Councilor Thomas mentioned, some of these things, then that will resolve it, because then we can say, well, let's put the judicial center over there instead of on the current site. So that's where my question is, you know, are we tied, if we go with option one, are we tied to putting the new judicial center where the current wings are? Or can we potentially put it somewhere else if the public safety world wants it somewhere else?
I think we're not tied to it. As I said earlier, these are 4 options. There may be a 5th option, and we can, we kind of wanted to narrow, to at least identify the options so that when we hand them to them, and so if you want us to make that a 5th option,
I think it should either be a 5th option or just kind of a branch, if you would, off of either option. Can you mix and match? Can you put the judicial building someplace else if that's the smart thing to do?
Okay.
If the public safety world wants it somewhere else.
Then if we can make it make sense with option 1, we will. If not, we'll make a 5th option.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Councilor Crabb.
Thank you. I've been thinking about this a lot, sitting out there in the audience for a year, and I've listened. I started formulating an idea, and I don't know if this would work, but I would like it to be considered. From a realtor's perspective, we're sitting on the highest and best use of this property where the tower and the wings are. I'm not sure it is government is the highest and best use anymore because of the way the city has developed now. At one time, and I'm all about traditions and history, if that is what's practical. At one time, this was the center of the city, and I don't see that anymore. So for practical purposes, it seems to me that the tower and the wings are in an entertainment district or in a convention and trade center district, and maybe that is the highest and best use for this land. Also, in the development of this city, we have created 2 campuses, technically. We've created an administration campus here where we sit, and then we've created a law enforcement and judicial campus near CPD and the jail. So it seems to me, from a practical purpose, I've also heard people, the sheriff and people coming forward with problems with transporting and holding prisoners at the tower while they're waiting trial. It seems like if the judicial center was down closer to the jail, some of those issues would be resolved, which in turn could save that department money. And then then there's the annex building that sits on a very nice piece of land right there on Veterans Parkway. Could that be the judicial center, or could that be sold to help pay for some of these projects? Those are just some of my thoughts, and I'm just throwing them out there because they've been stuck inside of me for several months. So those are just things that I'd like you to look at possible locations near the Citizen Service Center for an administration, for building administration, and locations down near the jail and CPD for a possible judicial. But I'd just like that to be considered.
Yeah, and I think that falls under option 4, new site, with your additional comments of where you would like to see what, and possibly sale of some real estate to help offset the cost of the new site and new structures. So we've got that.
One other thing about what Gary said, no matter what we do, if we're going to keep the tower and renovate it and use it for city purposes, or if we're going to sell it, we need that structural inspection.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Thank you, ma'am. And that's the reason for these various options, is to get us some more clear data on what's feasible, what's not. Because I agree with you. I think that the property that is sitting on is too valuable, not just for the highest and best use, but for being able to increase sales tax and property tax for the city. And I've heard people suggest that we try to sort of recreate, or at least make it look like, the original courthouse that was attractive if we moved it to another site. So I think this is the opportunity to gather the information with your approval, so that we can put numbers to that. And what sounds like a great idea, when we look at the numbers, we may go, wow, maybe that's not the best way to proceed. So I think your comments are spot on. Councilor Barnes.
It's easy to see just around this table here all the various ideas. I think what really is going to work and what has worked for this government in the past is the many meetings that we have for the citizens to come, because after all, we do represent the citizens. And so I think to be on the bandwagon of what Judy said, I think that we need to come up with maybe a schedule that we can start having for the citizens. We have a beautiful meeting place here where we can conduct the meetings and really get a feedback from the citizens themselves on what they want, which is essentially, while we're here, we're to gather information for the citizens that we represent. So if we can get a schedule, and we've done it in the past, where we've had the citizens come in, and maybe a little form or something, where they can put their comments, so that we can gather those facts together statistically, and really glean out what the citizens really want us to do as far as all this.
Sure. And we'll certainly do that, Councilor Barnes. And in fact, as you mentioned that, as Councilor Thomas brought that up, as I'm thinking we might just even consider having public forum just to share these options.
There we go.
And get feedback from the public and get those questions, maybe 2 or 3 meetings, just to share the same options that we've shared with you and allow for public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to make sure that everything we do is transparent and that the public understands the options that we're considering, and then they'll understand when we decide to narrow options why we've done so, and have an opportunity to provide input. So, absolutely. Councilor Woodson.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback. Good morning, City Manager. I just want to piggyback on the meetings. I remember, and probably the Planning Division can do it again. I remember when we were having the conversations about the round tables, and when we were going to design some of the roundabouts and things like that, we would go out to the public. There were some prudential sketches. There were, let's say, just presentations, and there were already thoughts, questions, possibility that you can give to the constituents, and they were able to vote on what they felt and make their comment. I agree too. I'm hearing a lot also that the judicial building should be close to the jail, to the public safety, because of the transportation of inmates and so forth. And it sounds great, but at the same time, we got to watch those dollars and cents too. I haven't heard too much about the administration portion of it, but public safety-wise, I've heard the same comments, trying to put it close together in that area, try to get everything that deals with public safety, the judicial system, all in kind of like, let's say, like it says, a central location for them where it's easy for people to go. It was even brought to my attention in working with different groups, even a space or ability for different programs for inmates transitioning out. This would be the perfect, location if everything is done in that center. You go in there, because he committed a crime, you get to hear your sentencing, whatever. You go there, and then you have a rehabilitation area for you to prepare to come back into society. I think it's the perfect time and momentum there to do that, because all of us get phone calls about reentry. We get phone calls about inmates not being able to get a job. There's nowhere for them to go. How many inmates we have. So I think it would be perfect if you have your probation officers. You have everything right there. It becomes like a one-stop shop. And I think if we can get the private partnership in that, because everybody has investment, bondsmen, this kind of stuff, I think it would be the ideal judicial building we can have. If we just take our time and think it out. And like it's been said many times, we're not going to make everybody happy. But if we can get a happy medium and something that serves the people that are going to use it, I think that'll be the best fit. And watch the dollar amount. We got to keep telling people too, if you want this, remember it's going to cost this. So when we're voting on the dollar amount, don't get mad because we're listening to what you're asking for. But the sooner we start those meetings, I would say it will be great because people start talking and it gets all misconstrued. So if we can get it, I would say get the sororities to help, a lot of the organizations to help put out the word for them to conduct the meeting and we can come there. I mean, use every little thing that we've used in the past that we know works to make it to our beneficiary.
So, Mr. Mayor, instead of, we'll go ahead and schedule maybe 3 meetings, and instead of bringing it back for council to vote on the second Tuesday, we'll bring it back the fourth Tuesday, and between now and the fourth Tuesday of February, we will have at least 3 meetings, and then when we come back, we can kind of update you on what we heard from those meetings, and then we would be asking you to allow us to move forward, and she's going to cover what the budget will be, but they would move forward to look at all the options, but the public will at least have had a chance to have a say regarding the options.
Okay. All right. Councilor Thomas.
Mr. City Manager, if you will recall, when we did the OLOS campaign, the first thing we did was we went into all 8 council districts and had presentation and meetings. Mm-hmm. And then after we did that, we pulled together the information that we had received in those meetings and went back out 3 more times to the general public. They didn't come here, we went out there. And I think that if we can do that, maybe not 11 meetings, but make sure that we are in places around town that it's easy and convenient for our citizens to come to hear what we have to do. And I think also during that time, there were people who, and we don't need to do this by the fourth Tuesday in February, but there were people who went to Kiwanis and who went to exchange clubs and Rotary clubs and Wednesday night church suppers and whatever else was going on to make some of those and answer questions. So I just want us to be as completely above board and transparent as we can be to get that kind of feedback.
Sure.
I agree. I will ask a question, though. because this is, and the question is simply designed to make sure we're going out to the public with information that allows them to understand the scope of what we're doing. Is it better to try to get some of these numbers and have a clearer understanding of what the costs were being? I think that's what Councilor Woodson was saying, so that, and I ask that because that's a 4, 5, or 6 month process, because these options pretty much entail everything that was made available, but it's hard to narrow the focus into what they like and don't like if they don't know the
It may be good for us to go out once and say, you know, what are you thinking, what do you need? And then come back with some of these professionals to have them help draw up some plans and then go back out again. This is, I was real serious about making haste slowly, because we do want this to last for a long time. So we want to make sure that we've got the kind of input that we need to do the right thing.
Well, Mr. Mayor, here's what I plan to do, and I agree with you on the series of meetings and then going back out. My thought was to do 3 meetings, one maybe center of the city and one south of the city and one north of the city, and just on these 4 or 5 options. And so then we would come back to you on the 4th Tuesday. But when we get meat on the bone, so to speak, you know, that's when we would have the meetings that you've described, Councilor Thomas, because we would have more information to share, and we would know where judges and public safety folks stand, and then we would have the meetings in the districts, and then we'd capture their thoughts and then go back. That would come later, but for this first round where there's just 4 or 5 options, we just want to hear from them. You know, we want it over here, we want it over there, we don't want, we think those are just the 4 options. So we'll have 3 meetings, and 4th Tuesday we'll be back, that you will allow us to proceed with the work that she's going to talk about in this budget that we've outlined. But later we will come back and all of that you've talked about.
I used to have a boss that when we explained things to him, he would say, "You've told me more about artichokes than I really wanted to know." And maybe that's what we need to do, is to make sure that the public knows more about artichokes than they really want to know, and give them as much information as we can.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
So back to the Deputy City Manager on the budget. That's what she was trying to get to.
Is the budget for the proposal that was submitted, includes planning and programming with a company called CGL. They are a judicial specialty consultant. This is where they would meet with the judges, meet with law enforcement to hear all of their needs in order to program the facilities to meet the needs of all the judicial offices. The second component is project management with Aaron and Clemens. This would be a not-to-exceed amount of $180,000, and this would be for them to be all part of the process from start to finish, to be a representative of the city, the owners of this facility, and to provide that expertise to this project. The third component is design, and this is the partnership with Heck Bertishaw and 2WR. The proposal was option 1 and 2 was $380,000 for them to provide all of the deliverables. For option 3 is $172,000, and option 4 is $85,000, for a total of $1,091,760. So this would be the contract that we would bring back if these are the 4 options that council wants us to provide those additional details on, again, to provide that information back out to the public after their services have been rendered.
So,
I'm sorry, Councilor Allen had a quick question.
Did you want to say something?
well, I was just going to ask the question. So if we were able to eliminate, let's say option 4, then we would eliminate that cost.
That's correct.
So that's gets to why we share the options, and if we could, you know, it's a tough decision to make, obviously, and then you've got to know numbers and what it would cost, But if we could narrow the options down, it would obviously save some money.
Okay, Councilor Allen?
Are you asking us to approve or eliminate any of the options, all the options today?
No, sir. I just present those to say that if there was an option on there that around this table it says there's no way we're considering that, we would take that option off the table, and we wouldn't waste our money and on that option. But you know, when we share these options with you, in order to know what it is going to cost to, you know, it's kind of like, you know, it's tough to, because you need to know, you know, what it would cost us to do either of these options, and then you can make an informed decision based on the cost. And the only way to do that is to have them vet and do all of these, whatever they need to do, and present all of the information to you on each and every option. And so short of that, it's going to cost us for each option.
Well, again, this is the first blush. We've just seen this today. It appears to me 3 and 4 are so close that there's very little difference in between the two. I think the parking garage, well, no, even that's in both of them. But there's just very little difference in 3 and 4 if we wanted to eliminate one. But my main question was the cost, the $274,000 cost. I'm looking at the Hick-Bertishaw sheet, and it talks about, in the first line there, first bullet point, includes 12-person trips for on-site meetings, workshops, that kind of thing. What does that mean?
They will meet with all of the offices, the judges, the district attorney, the state court solicitor, probate court, all of the courts, all of the judicial offices, the clerks of Superior Court, and go through a evaluation process of their needs going forward. So they would be on site meeting with all of those judicial offices.
Just the judicial?
Yes, this consultant, CGL, is a judicial expert, so they would work with all of the judicial offices.
Would that include the sheriff?
That's, yes, includes the sheriff, the marshal, every judicial office that's located currently in the tower, as well as those that would have input, CPD, in those.
Would they be looking at, based on need of all those entities, would they be looking at possible sites or best suitable sites, or would that be something different that we would?
That would be something different. This consultant would not be considering sites, specific sites.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Davis?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I've got a lot of information here to digest. I just got this, I guess, this supplement document that kind of supports these numbers right here. I guess my question is are these preliminary numbers to get you to the point of drawing a complete set of construction plans, or is this total package?
No, this is a preliminary report that will provide the deliverables that's outlined, which includes site plans and buildings and the needs assessment and the square footage required and the estimated cost, but it is not full design plans.
So this is all on the front end, but then there'll be other costs to draw up a complete set of plans and all the other things that go along with it.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I think the good thing about pausing to
I'm
allow.
not finished, Mr. City Manager.
Okay.
Okay, well, first question comes to my mind is why don't you just let the consultants handle it and give us the information needed? But I'd like to just, from my perspective, and I think some of you are aware of what I do, my business, how I go about this stuff. I think that You know, I hear a lot of conversation on this, and sometimes I hope nobody takes this personal, but sometimes I just feel like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And ultimately, with all this information, it just gets mixed up. And that's where we talk about professionals, but you understand that the professionals we're talking about all have certain responsibility tasks. They do certain things. I think one of the recommendations that I'd like to make here today, I mean, really, you got to start somewhere, and you got to start with the economics. You got to start with the sustainability, and you got to really look at Columbus, and you got to really look at the dollars that we have available to work with. And you got to look at the future of this city, where we're going. If we have limited growth, if we have limited GDP, if we have a limited populace, all these factors have to play in at the end of the day when you add up what exactly do you have to work with. I mean, it's really, in simple terms, a market study. And that's where you start. I know everybody's got their ideas and how they want to do it and all, but the goal should be to look at the past history, look at what we've done with, understand our budget, understand the dollars we have to work with and run this government, and look at the operational matters, the operational cost and the efficiencies that can be created here in what we're doing, because at the end of the day, whatever we do, we should be trying to eliminate all those costs so we save more money for the taxpayers, more money on the operations side, and creating efficiencies and making it work. That should be the goal. I mean, that's just, you've got to really understand that, and I've said it before, this is not about building buildings today. In our world is more about the science of the operation. I mean, we've got these things, I know there's some construction people in here, but that's what we deal with today. Anybody can build a building. You know, in understanding construction of buildings, there's only like four, you can do it out of wood, you can do it out of concrete, you can do it out of steel. You can frame it differently, but there's the science of the operation. So we really need to understand that and take that in consideration. And you know, my recommendation, without getting into too much conversation on this matter, I mean, we're talking about a lot of soft cost matters where you fill in the blank. A lot of this is somewhat defined out in the community, and you get too many people involved, the cost continues to go up higher and higher and higher. And you know, we should be thinking about these tax dollars, and when we communicate this to the citizens, we should be able to come up with, get the most for the least amount of money and meet the needs of our government. I've already kind of said that, but you know, my recommendation in looking at this, we've got some really good developers, top-notch developers who understand this and could probably plug in that number today. We've got a couple examples that you can just plug in the number, what the cost is today to build one of these buildings. I would recommend, you know, take the people out, the arrangements that are there, and the people who are somewhat making a living on this, take them out of it and go to the community where we got our developers, create a task force, maybe 4 or 5. You could add somebody from the GC world, but add some developers that will come in here and volunteer. And we've got some good ones that know this stuff in and out. Incredible ones that know this stuff in and out. I know who they are. And get them in a room and let them look at all this stuff and give them the goal, the example. If I was to do this, I'd look at it as this is the money I have to operate on. If this is the debt I'm taking out or my money, how am I going to get the best bang for my buck? What can I sustain? What can I build? How can I make this work? Give them that task, and then we can figure it out. Because all these, you've got all these different options. I mean, you at the end of the day, they come back and give us, you pick an option, they give us an astronomical number, then you're back to square one. You got to eliminate all that stuff on the front end. The only way to do it is get people that know what they're doing. I'm not talking about your construction managers. I'm not talking about your architects. They got different tasks, all of them have different disciplines that they work. Get the people who figure this out on the front end well, on the construction cost or the soft cost, and then move into the other side of it. I mean, that's my recommendation. It wouldn't take long for them to do that, and you could probably nail it down, because I don't think any of us, at the end of the day, you're going to have 3 over here that want something, 3 here, 3 there, 3 there. It's just, and you're going to go to the community and you're going to get something totally different too. But it should be about the science of the operation. We should learn, we should try to save as much money in the future from our budget and provide the services to the citizens that we need. And looking at our community, I'll tell you this, you know, if you go around the state, you can just look at the state, you can look in the southeast. Outside of buildings that have already been built, whether in Savannah or downtown Atlanta, most of these are in these larger cities, but I challenge you in the last 10 years, to show me a judicial or a government building or any kind of building like that that's been built that's over 5 or 6 stories. I'd say 4 stories. I mean, I'd like to know. And there's a reason for that. It's because of you can only afford so much. The higher you go, wider you go, the more ornate you get, the higher that cost goes. And communities know that, and they can only afford so much. So these are things that I focus on that may not be, you know, the conversation in general today that we're talking about, that's a little more in detail, it's a little more in depth. But I would think that if you put a small group of what I would call a task force of developers, they would be able to help you identify and understand this a little better. And we'd know a better direction to go, and we can narrow it down. Right now, we're a little broad, in my opinion. So those are my comments.
So,
Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I may. Councilor Davis, thank you for those thoughts. And I agree with you in terms of, you know, the building has, you know, what it has to be at the end of the day. And, you know, we have a procurement process, obviously. We're government. And, you know, it's a law, a local law, and we have to follow that. And we can assemble a small group of developers to comment on things, but these would be the same people that would obviously want to be involved in the construction. Okay, and so we can bring a team of them together to have a discussion and give us their thoughts, their advice, and direction, and then we can share that with those who are working on our behalf. The construction with the Newt Aaron and with the 2WRH Heck Bertishaw and with the other CGL. You know, I can talk to you about how we might lean on them for some advice and direction. I mean, we're open to that, but we just want to make sure that we don't put them in an awkward position that they're not able to compete if they're interested in competing. So we're open to that. We want to hear from any and every, we want to hear from the citizens, we want to hear from developers who feel, because they're stakeholders, they have skin in the game, they're taxpayers, and so we're open to listening to all of them.
And I appreciate that, Mr. City Manager. And I know there may be some, you know, I mentioned GCs. GCs would probably be the ones that you're referring to, not the developers. I don't think there's any developer we're going to pick out there to build a building. We're going to pick GCs to do that. There may be some GCs that don't want to do it, not interested in doing it, and there may be some that will, but you could still get that information. I think the disciplines like architectural side and the construction manager and all, they would be resources to talk that the developers can utilize to pull all their thoughts together. But I'm talking about people that have their own businesses, they do their own work, and they understand it, and
Sure.
they can be able to help you
Sure.
figure it out and give you a better path. That's just my recommendation.
Yeah, and you know, I think it makes good sense. I think, as the city manager pointed out, if you've got some of those individuals, let's get them involved and engaged. Because, I think the main thing is we get one shot at this. So we have to make sure, if we're a little deliberate, we have to be. We have to make sure that we balance a lot of different concerns, from the financial concern to the citizens' concern to our wanting to continue to provide services in a manner which reflects well on the community. So, yeah, I think that'd be an awesome idea.
Okay, that's it.
So, any final questions about the proposed budget and before she leaves the podium? And so what we'll do again, we anticipate having 3 meetings, public meetings, between now and the fourth Tuesday of February. And we will come back to you fourth Tuesday of February to present this as the budget, or what could be amended between now and then, but the budget for moving forward with the process.
Yeah, and again, counselors, if you think of something when you leave here that you'd like to be considered, let's go ahead and get it to the city manager's office now so that we don't have to react to it at the 11th hour.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. The next update, Mr. Mayor and Council, I have is a Parks and Recreation pools update. You may recall last year we came to you because we were having some challenges with our dated pools, and so Parks and Rec came up with an excellent program for our young people citywide, and we wanted to start early with you because swim season is in May, and we don't want to wait until May is upon us to start talking to you about the pool season for the summer, so we wanted to start talking about it right now. And so our Director of Parks and Recreation, Holly Browder, is here to talk to us about that.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and Mr. City Manager. Thank you for allowing me to come this morning. I hope to give you a quick overview of sort of where we are at this point and perhaps where we can go in the future with our outdoor facilities. For a moment, out of respect for our newer council members, I'm going to go back for a second just to give some information of where our pools began, and we're just going to talk about outdoor pools today. So in 1999, the SPLOST called from a transition from the 18 neighborhood pools that we had had for some time. They were located all over the city, and it was determined at that point to go to a more regional concept of 4 outdoor pools within the city. And then over time, we would start to close down some of the neighborhood pools. They were aging, they were in disrepair, and so it was determined it was a better way for us to operate and to be able to serve the citizens by having 4 somewhat larger pools with more amenities, and so that was the determination. And so here's our list of our original pools for the 18 that we had at that time. And so you can see from here, in 2002, we opened 3 of those super pools or neighborhood pools that began to open. That was Salmon Road, Rigdon Park, and Shirley Winston. And in 2010, you can see that we went back to double churches. It was needed for repairs. And so we went back at that point, did some renovations, but kept the pool at the existing location and just made some updates for that facility. And then, of course, in 2013, we opened the Columbus Aquatic Center next door. So that's our current facilities that we have for the Parks Rec Department. And this is some of the things we spoke of last year, and we've talked recently of some of the challenges that we face with at least 2 of our outdoor pools. Last year, we spoke to several contractors to try to determine what we could do going forward. Where were we, and what could we do to open those pools for the season? An assessment to determine the leaks is roughly about $25,000 to $30,000 per pool, which means just to have an assessment done for those pools is about $50,000 to $60,000. Unfortunately, we won't know until an assessment is done how bad they really are. I've included a couple of pictures just to give you an idea. to show you what some of the issues we have are. You can see cracks, we have corrosion, and just things, not from maintenance, but it's just what happens with outdoor facilities and outdoor pools in particular when you deal with chemicals. And so at that point, we decided to wait and to move forward with a different program and not offer these two pools last year. However, we would like to see them eventually come back online. I know many council members have spoken to me offline and in the off-season about the pools, and we've discussed the opportunities and the things that we would like to see going forward. I say that, where do we go from here? Unfortunately, we can't continue to patch the pools. It's just too high of a cost. Not for pools that need more work than what we can ultimately do with just a patch. What we would like to have council consider is taking at least those two pools at this point and going forward as splash pads. They're a way for our department to continue like services, for the community to still use them, and also we could continue to operate them to receive revenue, meaning that we would put fences. They would not just be an open facility where anyone could come up and use them. They would be a fenced facility, and we would charge gated admission to be able to use that. And then, obviously, we have to identify funding and the cost. We did reach out to a vendor that we have used multiple times and also have used them for the Aquatic Center. And the initial estimate we were given was about $1.5 to $2 million per pool. And then the estimated time to do that work is about 12 to 16 weeks once a vendor is selected. But that would at least get those two pools back into a splash pad capacity. That would then leave us with those two potentially becoming a splash pad, and then Rigdon Park and Double Churches operating as they have done previously. So that would put all four of our outdoor facilors online.
Excuse me just a second.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Huff has.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
That $1.5 million, $2 million, that's redoing the pool area as a splash pad?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That would be, part of it would be some work on our behalf. Obviously, all the existing structure has to come down. The shell of the pool has to come out, has to be backfilled and put back in. And then from there, the vendor contractor would come in and build, design basically our facility from that point forward. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. But this is essentially, and I included just a couple of ideas. I mean, obviously, we can design it how we choose, and that will determine a lot of the cost of it. But at this point, those are some examples of what we would look to go towards.
Councilor, I'm sorry.
No.
Councilor Crabb?
Yes, ma'am.
Holly, does having a splash pad save on liability and insurance also?
No, ma'am, it does not. The city is self-insured, so that doesn't affect us. I will tell you, though, how it would save on us. We would be able to save some on staffing cost because we obviously wouldn't have to have 10 to 20 lifeguards on site. We would still, as a department, we've discussed still having lifeguards, if you will, because they're basically trained in CPR first aid. A kid nicks their toe, scratches themselves, falls down, things that kids do every day. Plus, they have the ability to help us to take our water samples and do some of the things that we would still be required to do, but just in a lesser way, if you will. We would still operate concession stands, so families have the opportunity to come and purchase, kids for lunch or, a snack in the afternoon. And so we would still have all those overhead, but we would hope that some of the costs that we now see in wages and overtime would decrease. So that would hopefully be some cost savings. And ultimately, depending on how large our facility would be and how much water and how much retention we would have, we could ultimately see some cost savings with utilities. But all of that is depending on what type of facility we choose. Yes, ma'am.
I got another question here.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Councilor Woodson.
Yes.
Good morning. How
Good
are you?
morning.
Holly, just food for thought. You said this will be which two pools that we would turn?
Currently, it would be Shirley Winston and Salmon Road. Those are the two pools that we did not offer last summer due to the current situation we have with them. We did operate Rigdon Pool, and we did operate Double Churches. Double Churches was the most recent pool that we renovated, and that was in 2010. And so obviously, Rigdon will be very close behind Salmon and Shirley because it was designed and it was built at the same time. So we do have some of the same issues, but they're not as severe. And ultimately, we've tried to make sure we could operate the facility as long as possible for the community.
In the new splash pad, I like it because I go to the one downtown all the time, and it's always filled. The one in front of 11th and Bay, it's always full. But I would like for us to consider, like having picnic chairs, tables, or something for families, or a grassy area or something where people can go, because it does become challenging when you go there to find seating, but it is packed. I've never been down there with my grandkids that hasn't been packed.
And those are the opportunities that exist for us if we put the fencing back to the way it is now, or somewhat similar to the way it is now, because then you have the concrete slab, if you will, where kids can run and they can sit with their families under umbrellas and have that snack or have that lunch, which is what they do now. And so we would look to keep some of those amenities and some of those aspects of it, because we don't want that part to go away. We want people to be able to come, just as they do, as you mentioned, going down there. People come and stay for several hours. They don't just come, let the kids jump in and then jump out. They make it a day or, a very long outing for their families, and we would expect to do the same.
Well, I would say thank you for the innovative thoughts about it, because that splash pad is really lots of fun, and it really helps those that are on wheelchair, disability children. They don't have to worry about trying to have the equipment to get in or out. I've seen several children, even my cousin, when he came to visit, we took him down there, and he just loved it, because in his own wheelchair, he didn't even want us to push him or touch him. He was going to run through it with his wheelchair, and he did. So congratulations. I think it's a great idea.
And the other side of this is we can be as creative as we want to be. We can spend as much as we can to make it as user-friendly. Obviously, yes, it is ADA, because it's a zero entry, so anyone can participate at any age, any level of ability, so it's not restrictive. No offense, but I think we also have seniors that get out there sometimes too. When it's hot here in the summer, everybody likes to get out there and cool off, and so this is a great opportunity to be able to do that. And obviously, splash pads have come a long way. We love, I think the one downtown, that Uptown that they have is phenomenal. It's great. My kids have been to it. But there's other opportunities that exist. Some of the similar features that we have now with the dumping buckets and some of those type things, we can obviously make it as creative as we want to be to add those in, depending on cost.
I just wanted to make sure we have the identities, where people can sit and so forth. And I think it's a great idea to have the concession stand. We usually just take a picnic basket with us, but if something happens or a restroom, it's very difficult. So that's all. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead for a moment as to last year and our summer passes and talk about that for just a moment. So for those of you who heard our spill last year, and as the city manager alluded earlier, we did a program for the youth in the community to be able to take advantage of our outdoor pools. And even though we only had 2 outdoor facilities instead of 4, we sort of emphasized some of the positives and some of the things that children could participate in by getting what we called a summer fun pass. If you will note on the screen, I have listed those passes that we gave out last year. So please take a moment. We gave out 3,500 passes last year for children in the community. And I can tell you they were used, and they were used a lot, because the thought was that, okay, well, you only have 2 pools now, things won't change. Well, that's not true, because those people who normally would have gone to the other 2 pools that we didn't open now came to those pools. For the very first time in a very long time, or at least as long as I can remember, we had to have someone sit at the gate with a people counter, if you will, to click people in and click people out. Because we were just that busy on most of our days. We actually got complaints from citizens, well, there's not that many people in the pool. Well, that's not what we have to consider. We have to consider the opportunity that mom who's sitting lounging on the chair watching her kids, if she gets hot, she may want to get in the water. And so if you get calls, that's why we have to click people in, because we count every person that goes through the gate. It's not just the kids who are in the water or those who are swimming. We count everybody. So I can tell you that we were used a lot last summer, and especially with our passes, they were free. And so it allowed families that opportunity to come and do something, for the major part of a day or most of their summer, and it was at no cost. And I say that, I've included a copy of what our summer pass looked like and what opportunities existed. So we were very fortunate to partner with Metro last summer. They were gracious, and we did transportation for free for kids, so families didn't have to worry about the burden of a cost to get to the pools. And we also were very fortunate to be able to partner with the ice skating, or for the ice rink, if you will, with the Civic Center and the ice rink. And so kids were able to go there as free as well. We're looking,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Councilor Barnes?
I just wanted to mention, this was definitely thinking outside the box, and I think I've come to you a number of times, and this was, Mr. City Manager, this was awesome, with a capital A, and it was just a huge amenity for the city. So Holly, that was, I told you one-on-one, but I wanted to tell you in front of the council and the city manager, you definitely knocked it out the park with something like this here.
well, I will not take credit. It was staff. I mean, we have great staff
She
in our
always,
departments.
by the way, Mr. City Manager, you know her, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And every time you do give this young lady a compliment, she does like Serena is here, knock it back to everyone. But really, Holly, leadership starts at the top.
Thank you,
Starts
sir.
at the top. You did an excellent job with this here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
We thought it was very successful last year. We felt that these were good numbers. We know there's a little bit of give and take to that, honestly, and we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. But we really felt like it benefited the community, it really benefited our families, and everyone was able to take advantage of it. So we're looking at doing the same thing, obviously this summer, if, you know, with approval, if that's all right. We would like to do the same thing. So talking about this summer, we would do everything that we did last summer again. We have partnered again with Metro, for transportation, we've partnered with the Civic Center for them to provide ice skating. All of that will stay the same. The only thing, and I don't have it listed here because we haven't ironed out the details, is one of the things we really felt like we lacked last year, but due to timing weren't able to make it happen, was an educational component. A lot of people always look at our department, oh, you're just the fun, you're just the recreation, but our department has evolved a lot over the years. Parks and Recreation and industry has evolved a lot through the years. And we're very much about education, sometimes just as much as we are about the fun and the physical. We just kind of have to sneak it in there so kids don't see it. So we are currently having discussions with the Columbus Public Library System and what that might look like for some type of educational component for children to be added to the summer pass as a value for parents to be able to take advantage of. And like I said, I don't have any firm things that I can discuss today, but just wanted to mention that part of it. And we're hopeful that we can work out the details to make it successful so that families can benefit not only in a fun way to take their kids to the pool, but in an educational component as well, working with the library system. So we'll look to work again with them.
And Mr. Mayor, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, but I think you should at least talk to the River Center or the Springer just to see if they can partner and offer something too with this summer fun pass that would be free to those who would be interested, because the Metro bus transportation is there at no cost, and so they could get to that site, those sites.
Well, and you know, when we went to Denver, one of the things that I was really impressed by as far as providing opportunities for youngsters during the summer, giving them some more positive activities as options, was the Denver card. And they do something very similar. They actually incorporate cultural facilities. We've got a number of amazing museums, including the Coca-Cola Space Science Center. So I'd really love to see you kind of take and see if we can leverage that as well, because, I mean, it would be a tremendous opportunity for those facilities, simply because if a child wanted to go to one, a parent's probably going to take them.
Right.
So they'll still capture the entry for the adult and give some, exactly, keeping with what you were saying about the educational component.
Yes, sir.
What a great opportunity to provide our young folks.
Well, and the very fortunate thing for here in Columbus, we're very fortunate to have Metro and the system that goes pretty much all over Columbus. And so many of those locations that you both referenced are already part of those routes. And so it wouldn't affect, because Metro's, like I said, already on board and very excited about the program. And so it would not affect them in any way, because the children would already be riding the buses.
Terrific.
So we just need to coordinate that with those agencies.
Counselor Allen.
Along that same line, Mayor, I would like to ask if you could look at the Whitewater area. I know you can do a lot of things down there as a child, floating and those kind of things, but exposing them to that is the name of the game. Exposing them to the museums and all the other things that the mayor mentioned, I think is where we need to start with the youth, is just getting them in there.
Certainly. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So this is more of the summer fun pass. Some of the things that we did last summer, typically we don't do concessions during the week at the Aquatic Center. We've just not found for it to pay very well for us to do so we've just not done it. The other thing that kids really, really like at the Aquatic Center, and we're looking to build on as the years come, is our Wibbit obstacle course. It's essentially an inflatable set of floats, if you will, just super extra large that fit in our pool, and kids can go out and try to compete on them. They try to play on them, and so we did that once a week last year, and we'll look to do that again because kids just love that. Typically now we'll do it on Saturdays because it really is hard for us because it means we shut down most of the pool when we do it, and we have so many swimmers, and so we don't want to impact people as less as possible.
Councilor Woodson.
Oh, go ahead and finish your sentence.
That's okay. That's okay. But it's a good opportunity for kids. It's very physical, but it is part of the package.
I wanted to ask, because I like the concept too of the summer past. And I wrote notes too right after you mentioned the River Center and Spring Opera House. I had mentioned also the museums. I had already wrote that on there, and I said, well, I'll talk to her later about it. But I was telling the mayor, and just want to make sure in the process of it that we get the communication out that the summer pass is for the children, the adult, there'll be a fee. But I'm wondering if we can talk to these facilities that would work with us with the children pass, if there's a discount that can be done, for the parents or the escort of the child or something. Because in today's time, it's very expensive. And when the kids go to these places, they're going to want additional food and souvenirs, and it gets pretty expensive. So I think if we can create something where it's a fun packet, which is free for the child, of course, it won't be as expensive for the adult to go. Because if you have a household that, financially is okay, but kind of, they're going to say, well, yeah, I know you want to go, but I can't go. So because I can't go, you can't go because it's too expensive, the ticket for me. So maybe some innovative way, something like, 2 events for, $15, for the parent. Something to be able to generate, enthusiasm into the families to go along with the child, because a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it, and they keep telling me now, you put work before us, and I always say, well, somebody has to pay the bills. But our children, and in these times, they don't want to hear that. But it's the financial burden that we have. Light bills go up, gas goes up your pay goes up 1%, maybe 2%, So just food for thought.
Yes,
I think I love it, but it's just kind of way to find to help out. Or maybe some grants, foundations that would say, or even these companies, say, okay, we'll give so many adults a pass or something. I don't know what it is. I don't have an answer. It's just food for thought.
And Ms. Mayor and Council Woodson, I guess what I had in mind that I'll talk further with the director about was, some kids perhaps have not been introduced to the River Center or the museum or the Springer. And in some way, of course, we know the River Center gets 1% of the hotel motel tax.
That's correct.
If they could coordinate, and the River Center has a day, and the Springer or the museum have a day that they introduce our young people to their venue and have a little mini show or something. I'm thinking something that's free would be what I would have in mind, and it just, expose your facility to the next generation kind of thing. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I know the Springer has a summer program, but it's pretty expensive. They have scholarships, but I'm not sure how the recruiting of that is. But you don't want to recruit the children that have the opportunity to go. You want to recruit the children that have never been exposed. And that doesn't mean low-income children. You have middle-class families that can expose their children to things like that. So it's not things just focusing on a lower income. This is overall, because you do have, in today's society, you have too many middle-class families that are really struggling. I know with me, with the Community Warriors, when we go get food out, and I stay kind of in the back because I don't want people, to see me or feel bad. But I've seen some people I know, middle-class people, come through there to get food. And they, like, wore caps and stuff they didn't want. And that's why I'm saying that. And when I help, I always stay in the backpacking so people wouldn't feel bad. But I've seen some middle-class families that I know come through there and get food, and it's because they need it.
And Mr. Mayor, some of those venues I did not name, like the Liberty Theater, that includes them too, so we don't want to make sure that no one thinks we're leaving them out, yeah.
Well, in addition to providing opportunities for our youth during the summer, as you pointed out, there's a lot of families that don't understand all there is to do in Columbus. On the way home from with my wife this weekend, she said, I overheard somebody talking about another city in Georgia, and they said, well, there just wasn't anything to do there. She goes, well, what do we tell them that what there is to do with, in Columbus? And 15 minutes later, she cried uncle, said, please shut up, because there's a lot of things that are available around this area that people just, sometimes you're too close to the forest to see the trees kind of thing. You don't realize how many free options there are in this community that you can do as a family. I mean, well, we'll follow through on some of these ideas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But essentially, we would have the same locations that we did last year for pickup. As you can tell, we felt like that was pretty successful. And so obviously, if we moved on to any of these other organizations, we could offer the opportunity for them as well. If they want to be a part of that, we would just have to see what their comfort level is. But we would certainly stick with the locations, which were all of our rec centers. We have 8 rec centers. Our administrative office, we worked with Metro and the Columbus Ice Rink and the Aquatic Center. Those were our basic locations that were picked up during the 10-week pool season. We did give them out prior to pool season all the way up until the last week. We still gave the opportunity. People lose them, they misplace them, something happens to them, and we didn't want that to be any type of hurdle. And so we were able to give those out all summer long at our locations. And then as we open for the summer, we are typically try to open, if possible, we try to open the week of Memorial Day because the weather here is normally good. We're typically budgeted for 10 weeks, and so this would represent a 10-week schedule from May 25th to August 4th. This also represents the same schedule we had last year, which we felt was pretty good and well used by our community. And so we aren't looking to change it very much this year. We would pretty much stick with the same. And so this gives you an idea when we would open, when we would close this summer. Moving forward, Councilman Woodson mentioned a moment ago about getting the word out. These are the options that we used last year for getting the word out. Obviously, we could do the same with any new partners we take on. We would post in their locations or give it to them to help share on their social media and their avenues as well. We felt like this was pretty positive. We got lots of feedback last year. Lots of people knew about it. Didn't get many people who said, well, I didn't know about it. We're 6 weeks in. We didn't get a lot of that. And so we felt like this was a pretty successful campaign. It was put out way in advance. Parents were able to know about it. Press releases were sent out, as well as we did a lot of postings in various locations, as you can see here. We felt like that was pretty successful, and we will try to take the same route this year, if you will. Obviously, there's always a budgeting pact, and we did discuss that in great length last year, so I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up for this year. And so I wanted to take you back, especially for those council members who didn't have the opportunity to have this before now, but this basically represents from our 17 season, our 18 season, and the way our pool seasons operate, we operate between 2 years, basically, or 2 fiscal years, if you will, because we have July 1 starts a new budget year. And so we operate part of our fiscal year in that July, August timeframe, and then we have to wait all the way till we get back to the spring again when we'll open and operate the second half of that. So that's sort of the reason for that. So the numbers you can see here are half a pool season and half a fiscal year, obviously for those reasons. Our budget was cut last year, and we've been having great conversation with our finance director because we do have some concerns there because our actual expenses are pretty much on line with where we've been predominantly. And the question is, well, why are you there if you closed 2 pools? Well, we had to staff more at those other 2 pools that we opened last year than we typically would have. So basically, we kept almost the same number of staff because you have to count on how many people are in your pool. You can't just schedule and think, okay, well, we'll be okay. We have to schedule at the max to be able to accommodate, and we needed it last year. Like I said, we had that staff person sitting there counting every day, making sure that we don't go over. That's the last thing we want to do is have too many people out there in the health department come through, and we're over our capacity. So we're very cautious of that. And so just wanted to give you this. Also, the other part to that was that Rigdon, although last year Rigdon was going to operate only through August the 5th, that's what we did with Rigdon. Double Churches, on the other hand, we remained open 8 additional weeks last year. And that was partly because of the repairs that we made to the aquatic center. And we wanted to be able to accommodate the community so that they had somewhere to swim and they had somewhere to go. So the swim teams came, and the public were also allowed up until the October the 6th timeframe. So that just gives you a snapshot, though, of why we were open a little bit longer than we traditionally are. Moving on. Just leaving you with, this is where we are with our summer pass for the summer, and also our outdoor pools. And of course, I'm here to answer any questions if I can or be of assistance.
Any questions, Ms. Browder? Councilor Woodson.
I just had a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you reach out to the Infantry Museum too? Because they're free, but you can give a donation.
Okay.
And that's a very exciting place if our community hasn't gone yet to see the history. It's so innovative, so lively, and that it'll introduce it more. Westville, hopefully if this weather stops, is another way. Oxbow Meadow Golf is another good thing to look for a summer pass. A lot of young kids like it, but feel embarrassed because it's not publicized much, and it's such a good sports for them. It's just the list can go on of family fun things that can be done, kind of affordable for children in our community. And I agree with you, Mayor. Sometimes people will tell me at work, oh, there's nothing to do in Columbus. I say, oh my God, I can plan a whole day for you. It depends on you, what you like, what experience you want to have for yourself. And that's what we have to start putting out to our community is, what experience do you want of the town you live? There's so much to do. There's so much creative ways that you can also be a part of it. And I think that's the type of campaigns, and I think the Summer Pass will be the perfect way of bringing that into reality now as we look at 2025, 2030, as we look at the sense of our workforce being robotic. I think the exposure to these things to families, it's important. It's like when I go home to Puerto Rico, my cousins say to me, I like when you come visit because I go places I never even knew existed in Puerto Rico, and I live here. And it is because we get accustomed to our everyday routine that we fail to look at what's beyond us. We take our environment for granted and don't realize the wonderful things that are surrounded. Because if Columbus wasn't innovating and getting better and better each time, why were we picked one of the 10 best places for people to retire? I'm still trying to figure that one out. But as we move on, you hear more and more about Columbus. We have more and more other entities wanting to come now to Columbus. So while we might have some issues in crime and other stuff, we do have a great quality of life too, and we need to start. And if this is the seed to get it going, I think you're doing an awesome job. And you agree, to me, I think we have three really, all components of government is great, but I think we have three components that I think are very special and we should look at closely. And one is, of course, our public safety. Our rezonings are very important for our quality of life. And then our recreation. That's our quality of life. I mean, those are the very three that we really need to look at when we're doing budgeting, Mayor, and looking at things, because that's what makes people come to Columbus.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Barnes.
I'm glad you mentioned the National Infantry Museum. That's a treasure. We have a treasure right here in Columbus, Georgia. And it's an excellent history lesson for the children to go through. And for one. And then secondly, I was talking with a Korean War veteran. I think that, and he mentioned something that I've been thinking about. A lot of people need to know, thank you, ma'am, to go to the NIM so that they realize all the sacrifices that our women and men have made over the years for the freedoms that we have here. And that's a treasure. And doing something like that, maybe as you said, for the kids to marry that as well, it would be awesome. And Mr. Mayor, you're right. There are a lot of things that families can do that really don't really cost that much money, to do. My wife and I, we take our grandkids, and now we got great-grands, to the NIM. It's a history lesson. And so if you can put that on your list as well, that would be. You got it already. I should have known that.
I've been making notes, yes, sir.
I
don't want to leave anybody out.
I should have known, Mr. City Manager, that she had already done that. But thanks for mentioning it.
Thank you, sir. Holly, I think I turned you off by accident. Great job. You do an amazing job. Our Parks and Recreation Department probably touches as many or more people as any other division we've got in this city government. And sometimes your job is to let us know when funds are an issue, and we don't always get to deliver great news. Pools that need to be redone after 25 years, while intellectually we all know that, and that's the thing. So many people say it's for lack of maintenance. Maintenance is done on these pools, but there's parts of them that cannot be seen, cannot be inspected, and cannot be addressed until we really reach a critical stage. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, next I've got the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard update, Deputy City Manager Pam Hod.
Yeah, we need to hit your button so I can turn you back on. Bruce and I have a contest to see who can turn the most people off without them. No, I'm winning, by the way.
Good morning again, Mayor and Council. This is a very exciting project that I get to provide an update on today. All kinds of things going on MLK Jr. Boulevard. And if you haven't driven down it lately, you really need to go see the transformation that's happened on Martin Luther King. We have the trail that has been completed. We've got a resurfacing project that's ongoing as we speak. Signals to be in place at 2 intersections, as well as the outdoor learning trail. The MLK Trail goes from 10th Avenue to Brewer Elementary, and I've included some pictures of how beautiful the transformation has been on MLK. And we've got the signage up for the Dragonfly Trail system, and it's just spectacular. The signal and resurfacing, we anticipate, as long as the weather cooperates, that the resurfacing project will be completed by the end of February. The signals at Brown Avenue and Shepherd Drive will be completed by July. We are on a back order with the powder-coated mast arms at this point. We expect delivery in June, so those will be up as soon as we can get those operational. I took this yesterday. The resurfacing, like I said, is ongoing, started at 10th Avenue, and they've made it close to Brown Avenue. They're doing a lot of milling and a lot of construction in that area, but if you have a chance, you really need to go down Martin Luther King. This is the signal at Brown Avenue. You can see that it will really change the look of this intersection once the resurfacing is completed and the signals are in place.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Councilor Huff.
Thank you for this update. I got beat up this past weekend about the milling part down on the lower end. They want to know why the street was so rough. I said, we're coming.
They're coming.
I said it's a longer stretch from 10th Avenue out. My question is, there's I don't know if it's a parking ride or a sitting area that's still like the gray type dust, will that be paved in the future? Going toward Brewer Elementary School on that end?
That will stay gravel. That will be a gravel parking lot, but that is a park and ride at that location.
Okay, why?
That was how the project was designed. We can look at resurfacing that as well. But it was designed to be a gravel parking lot.
Okay, because when you come in there on a day like today, you know, and things settle and people want to use that, it's going to be a little messy.
Let us take a look at that.
Okay.
We'll look at that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The second part of this update is the outdoor learning trail, and I have Mr. Ronzel Buckner is here today, as well as Betsy Covington from the Community Foundation. This has been an effort on Mr. Buckner's part for several years now. He applied for a grant through the Columbus Together 2016 and was awarded a grant, and we have been working with him diligently to put this outdoor learning trail in place. I've attached a separate handout that you have is the entire interpretive markers, and it shows the detail that will be on each one of the markers at the 11 locations. This was an effort between CSU as well as Mr. Buckner spearheading this project. There will be 11 text panels, and I've provided each one of the locations. It starts at 10th Avenue and runs all the way to Rigdon Road. First at R.C. Cola, the second site at A.J. McClung YMCA. The third site is Dr. Henry L. Cook Sr.'s dental office, and each one of these locations has significance. Site 4, Spencer High School and Marshall Middle School. Site 5, the corner of Radcliffe Avenue and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Site 6 is Brewer Elementary School. Site 7 is George Washington Carver High School. Site 8 is the E.E. Farley Home. Site 9 is Carver Heights Community. Site 10 is the Carver Heights Motel. And Site 11 is Camp Benning. And again, this was a project initiated by Mr. Buckner in cooperation with the Together 2016 fund that's housed at the Community Foundation. It's been in cooperation between the city, the Omega Lambda Iota Social Action and Scholarship Foundation. They will be the organization that is contracting and partnering with Mr. Buckner to maintain the markers. The total grant amount was $16,000. Our responsibility will be the installation of the markers, and there will be some minor right-of-way and easement acquisitions for each one of the 11 sites. We have a couple of them that we'll have to do some easement acquisitions on. The budget was for the signs, $7,000, the curator services, $2,500, graphic designer, $1,000, and then the installation and other expenses is $55,000 for a total grant award of $16,000 on this project.
Councilor Barnes.
Ronzel, I congratulate you on the realization of your dream. I've traveled up and down Martin Luther King and just seeing it gradually come to fruition. I know it's something that warms your heart. Notice a lot of names of the unsung heroes who have contributed so much. So congratulations again on the persistence that you put with this project here. We can actually see the fruits of it right now.
And I'd like to give Mr. Buckner or Ms. Covington an opportunity to say a few words if you'd like. Mr. Buckner? You've worked long and hard on this project. You want to come forward?
I would like to
first thank the city for giving me the opportunity to do this project. It's been a lot of years putting it together. I remember maybe 5, somewhere like that, years ago, I came before council and asked for recognition for Dr. King for his sacrifice. And you allowed me to put an honorary recognition for Dr. King from Macon Road all the way down to 10th Avenue. Now, as people come through our city, and we still got more work to do, we need to get street signs up, and we also, as Harsh was saying about the markers. But when people come through our city now, they can really see Dr. King's name, knowing that we recognize his sacrifice. Before this project, before y'all gave me the honor to do this project for my city, if you didn't live in South Columbus, or if you didn't travel in South Columbus on a frequent basis, you did not know we honored his sacrifice. There's a lot more, as I say, things that need to be done. The city is on board. Business has already adopted portions of the trail as far as keeping it beautiful, planting shrubbery, not shrubberies, but blooming flowers. Also, I'm in the process of talking to some of the scrap salvage yards on Martin Luther King, and also talking to Columbus State University about doing a mural story from Macon Road all the way down to 10th Avenue, telling the story and history of Columbus on the buildings there, and taking some of the scrap and placing it on the fence. As you come through, you won't be able to see the scrap yard. And these scraps that would be on the fence would also be talking to tourists as they come. And we have tourists now that are visiting Martin Luther King Outdoor Learning Trail. We had a professor from Fort Valley State University to come by, as a matter of fact, yesterday. And he came to Columbus strictly to walk the Martin Luther King Outdoor Learning Trail. We're also in the process of working with the Muskogee County School District about putting an organic garden on the trail. So when people come to our city to tour, they would have an opportunity then to pull over to the side and let the kids run the garden and work the garden, so that they will understand where food comes from, they will understand the importance of healthy eating. And so these things that we're still working on, but I have people that come to my business from all over the world. And I sat here and I listened to you talk about the things that Columbus offer. Now Columbus offer history on African Americans, the contribution that they have contributed to our city to make this city the great city that it is. And I appreciate y'all's help and assistance.
Mr. Butner, you know, you started out by thanking the city, and with all due respect, sir, you got it backwards. This community thanks you for not only your vision and your commitment, but also for your perseverance, because it didn't pick up speed right away. You did a lot of visiting with individuals, both in the government and without, and this community owes you a big thank you. We appreciate you, what you've done, and the fact that it's tying in with the dragonfly trails and the beautification of a portion of our community that is so important to all citizens, of course, but also within the African American community. To be able to create a commemorative like you have done is just outstanding, and we thank you, and we do owe you a hearty round of applause. So we'll, one more time. Ms. Covington, do you want to say something? You had a little bit to do with this as well.
Kind of hard to follow that, right? I mean, look, this is, we told you it was going to look good. And one of the best things about my job at the Community Foundation, y'all know our mission is about enabling and promoting philanthropy that helps people create a vibrant, engaged community. If that's not what this is about, I don't know what it is. So on behalf of the Friends of the Dragonfly Fund, the Together 2016 Fund, and this amazing visionary who saw something and has persevered through convincing a lot of people that it could happen, thank you for believing in stuff like this, because it's hard sometimes. I mean, I've listened, you've had a tough morning already, asking you to see things that don't yet exist and possibilities. But in this case, you really have, and thank you. It looks good now, and man, it's going to look even better. I'm slipping out to go to the Columbus 2025 annual meeting where, you know, I chair the Vibrant and Connected Places Action Area. And as we think about beautifying and connecting our city for economic development and to improve the lives of our citizens and to attract and retain talent, this is what we're talking about. So thank you. This is a great city public-private partnership between the Dragonfly and you guys and the great staff who's getting this done. And look forward to seeing more success. Thanks.
Thank you, Betsy.
So for our next steps,
One quick.
Sure.
Oh, I knocked you out there. Councilor Woodson.
Just had a quick question, a little bit different for Donna. Donna, later, can you give us an update of the companies that we use, a little bit of the material, the asphalts that we use? Because it seems to me as we move on to doing the trails and all these great adventures that people are coming to us, it seems that the asphalt doesn't last very long. You know, the roads seem like we pave them and then you find lots of cracks and things like that. So I would like for you later to come and talk about that, because there's been streets that have been paved and we got to go back in there and pave them, but now they have to wait longer because of the list of other streets being there. So I'm wondering, what is the material we're using? What's the lifespan of that material? Because if we're going after inexpensive, but it's going to cost us more because we got to keep doing these streets over again, I have a concern about that. And so I just wanted to, as I saw the asphalt being put Martin Luther King Boulevard throughout the city, I've been thinking of that. What is it? You know, how do we connect it? How can we make it? And sometimes when we ask for our communities, it leaves a big, you know, can I say, like a dip almost between the road and the driveways. So just something for us to maybe in another work session get a little bit more educational and see what we can do and what these companies can offer and do a little bit better.
Okay.
And if you need an approval for this today?
No.
Thank you.
So for the next steps, we'll be coming back with the grant agreement at the next council meeting for approval. And we also will be planning a future dedication ceremony when the project is completed. So we want the outdoor learning trail to be complete and the resurfacing. We probably won't wait for the signals, but we want to definitely have a grand dedication ceremony for Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Great.
And so would you just clarify, the grant agreement is for the 16,000?
Yes, the grant agreement is for the 16,000, and because the outdoor learning trail is on city right-of-way, that's why the city is party to that. It will be with the fraternity who is partnering with Mr. Buckner. So the grant agreement is between the city, the fraternity, and the community foundation who houses the funds for Together 2016.
Great.
So we'll be bringing that forward.
Councilor Thomas.
I can't let this opportunity pass. There's a movie out right now called The Green Book, which I understand is a very good movie, and it's about the tourist book that was published in the 40s, 50s, 60s, so that African-American travelers would know where the safe places to stay were throughout the country. And two of the locations on the Martin Luther King Trail were in the Green Book. The A.J. McClung YMCA was in the Green Book, as was the Carver Heights Motel. So if you go see that movie, know there's a Columbus connection to those two places on the Martin Luther King Trail. Couldn't let it pass.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, next we are going to shift a little bit and bring up the Muskogee County Jail update by Ryan Pruitt, who's project engineer in our engineering department.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here to give an update on the Muskogee County Jail shower. It's an issue that we've been talking the last few weeks with the engineering department, the sheriff and her staff, as well as Public Works and Facilities Maintenance. The current condition, there are 36 showers located in the various pods in the South Tower. The current construction is a concrete structure. It has tile floors, tile walls, which currently have no waterproofing membrane. And that's an issue because over the years the grout has started to deteriorate and the water can now get behind the tile. And once it gets to the concrete walls, it finds its path of least resistance, whether that's an electrical conduit, a plumbing penetration, HVAC penetration, or makes its way out to the outside of the building. Water is leaking through the showers and especially into the showers below. So anytime water gets places, it starts becoming an issue. So there have been various repairs over the years, replacing some of the tile and that thing, but we haven't been successful in stopping the water leakage. The proposed repair, we'll get a contractor to come in and they will demolish the tile in every shower back down to the concrete structure. They'll install a new waterproofing membrane on top of the existing concrete. And the easiest way to explain that is basically it's kind of like a pool liner. It'll be tied into the drain. So if any water in the future ever gets behind the new tile we will install, it'll hit that liner and make its way into the plumbing drain and on out. So it physically can't get outside of the shower area. Then over that membrane will come back with new tile with epoxy grout, which is more durable than regular grout you might use. We'll also inspect the plumbing and the drain lines while we have everything open, make sure we don't have any issues there. And then the project will also include some work in the stockade to allow for the housing of inmates over there. To accomplish these repairs, the sheriff will have to clear out a pod for the contractor to get access to. In order to do that, we'll need some space at the stockade, which requires a little bit of work over there. Funding, the estimated cost, we're working with a few contractors now trying to get estimates on it. Right now, the repairs for the showers and also the work at the stockade is in the $600,000 range. The recommended funding source will be from the OLOST Public Safety Reserves. And the next step is once we get the quotes finalized, we would come back here in February asking for approval to use those funds. And I can answer any questions. I know the sheriff's here as well. If you have any questions.
First, let me say congratulations. I am very impressed you were able to convey a very thorough presentation in 3 slides. So thank you. You're my new favorite presenter. I did tour the jail, and I've seen this damage firsthand, and this is not a matter of wanting to fix it. This is a matter of we have no choice. This is getting worse by the minute. It's putting people in danger, and we need to get it done. So, Sheriff, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I'm like you. I like it short and
sweet and to the point, but I appreciate your consideration. I agree with the mayor. You know, we've had some meetings about this in the past, and it's just not getting better, it's getting worse, and I'm just looking forward to moving forward with this. Any questions you have, I'd be happy to
Yes, Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. My only question is the timeline. What are we looking at as far as,
We've estimated about 8 or 9 months to do all of them, because they have to do 2 at a time, completely finish them, and then the sheriff will move inmates back to that pod, and then we'll do the other 2, and it's a few weeks per set, so that's about the estimated timeline.
all right, thank you.
And Sheriff, you may want to address the old original stockade, which had been utilized for housing some pit prisoners. You can no
Yes.
longer do that, and because of the repairs that'll have to be done to the stockade in order to house some of the prisoners while we're replacing that.
Absolutely. We stopped using the stockade since I took over. We had a couple of people escape from there, so there were some issues, and they were trustee status inmates, but nonetheless, we had to run them down and bring them back. And so there were just issues with that old building, the fencing. They literally broke out a wooden door that had been there forever, and the fencing around, they just, you know, they were trustee status, so there wasn't a lot of security in that area. They were low-level inmates, but nonetheless, the decision was made to put all of those inmates back into the jail proper so that we could secure them. And we stopped using the stockade. Additionally, there were some issues with the facility in the stockade itself, with the showers, just like the rest of this building, but this building was built in the 1800s. So in order to really use the stockade in a place that's safe and secure for inmates to be, we need those updates to the stockade first before we start anything else. Fix the showers. We've got a door that needs to be a metal door. We've got some windows that need bars, fencing around it, things like that, so we can truly utilize that. Honestly, if I had that space today, I could put inmates in it. I need that space because if you're paying attention to the news, the count's going up. So we definitely need the space now and probably in the future. So, but we'll definitely be using it to help move some of these inmates around as they're working inside the jail proper to fix the shower issues.
Thank you. Councilor Thomas?
Sheriff, I'd like to ask a question that is somewhat related. I think you mentioned that the numbers are going up.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand we're over 1,200.
1205 this morning. Yes, ma'am.
And can you give us any idea how much of that may be related to the fact that we are in our courtrooms, we're still minus some courtrooms, and how does that impact that to a great deal, or you think not so much, or would you want to?
Okay, I will tell you what I know, because I have been working with the judges about some of these issues. I know for a fact that we have people who have been in jail awaiting trial, some of them since 2015. Actually, we have 2 that are set for February from 2014. I can tell you that of those 1,200 inmates, only approximately 100 of them are charged with a misdemeanor offense. That means 1,100 others are charged with felony offenses. We've done everything we could do to move people out of that jail facility. You know, we work with the judges on a bonding schedule, even going to an OR bond. You know, state court does an excellent job of doing guilty pleas for low-level offenses. We have a pretrial release program that we can look at other cases that are low-level felonies. We've got 100 people in that. So since I took office, the day I took office, the jail count was 995. Today it's 1,205. So obviously, people are coming in and they're not getting out. The best I can tell you is that it doesn't seem to me to be a problem with misdemeanors. It is a problem with felonies. And we've done everything I know to do, at least, to try to put people out on some sort of a bond. The judges have been excellent to work with us whenever they can to help with that.
Do we still have a good number of, or a number of state prisoners that are awaiting transport to other facilities? I know that sometimes that impacts this number also.
We do have those. Sometimes the judges will sentence people to to different programs within the State Department of Corrections, and we have to wait for bed facilities. So we definitely do have some inmates awaiting transfer into the state system, but I do not, by and large, think that's our largest problem. I think that perhaps the courtrooms is one factor in this, them not having had courtrooms. Another factor, of course, is, scheduling, perhaps. I mean, honestly, I think a good idea would be to sit down and all of us talk about what is the backup, why are so many of these people, not moving through the system. But I don't want to point a finger, but I'm certainly willing to discuss what's going on.
And it sounds like there are a number of different factors.
Right,
that
yes, ma'am.
may
Yes,
or may not be related to each other.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's good.
And I can tell you that our intention is to, most of these are elected officials, and there's a lot of moving parts. There's
Yes,
just
sir.
so many different pieces of this that our intention is, now that the courts are coming back online, we think it's an opportune time to maybe convene just a discussion with the stakeholders and people that play a part in that process, and let us, from the general government standpoint, ask what can we do to try to help facilitate any necessary efforts that may identify bottlenecks and try to streamline this. Because the one certainty is that we have to do something.
Yes.
And we're going to try to play a role just in terms of facilitating a discussion. And so we fully expect to be able to come back and make a report to this council within the next several weeks.
I would think one of the last things we want to do is to have the Department of Justice get involved, let them stay where they are. But I applaud this, that we'll have these conversations.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like for the Deputy City Manager, Pam Hodge, to talk about the courtrooms for a second.
So just as an update, floor 11 is now open and operational. Floor 10, the courtrooms on the 10th floor will be available next week. So they are transitioning back. There's 2 on 10. So they are transitioning back to the government center and the operations of those courtrooms. And it's been a feat from the sheriff's office and with the judges to reorganize and rearrange. And everybody's done just a great job in working with us as we're trying to get the government center back to normal.
Finally getting the elevators back, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes. Councilor Barnes had a comment. I apologize.
Just a comment to the sheriff. Sheriff, I know you've been faced with a number of challenges, but you've done a fantastic job. And who's that gentleman, that minister, that's standing to the left there?
My partner in crime.
Well, let me tell you something. Not only I can congratulate him, but he can say a heck of a prayer at one of the churches that we had, a testimony, that gentleman right there. So just thank you both for all the job you're doing, especially you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Councilor Barnes. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, next topic Ryan Pruitt is going to bring before you has to do with Memorial Stadium.
We wanted to give an update on Memorial Stadium. Engineering's been working with Parks and Rec and Public Works on an issue that we have. Here's an aerial of the stadium just to kind of refresh everybody's memory about the layout. On the left-hand side, which is west, you can see the press box, which is that building there. You kind of have a little plaza area. Then you have the bleachers. I'm going to talk a little bit about the concrete bleachers. Those would be the concrete steps. Then you have the aluminum bleachers actually on top. So this is just kind of a reminder. You have a similar layout on the east side with the bleachers and a smaller concession stand on that side. A little bit of history. The existing concrete steps or bleachers are original to the stadium and over 100 years old. They've been renovated and improved over the years, but they are the original concrete. The stadium is used for youth, high school, and collegiate football games. And the most recent large renovation was completed in 1997 and included demolition of a portion of the existing bleachers. They used to go up higher than they do now. We took them down. Included repair of expansion joints, ADA improvements, renovation to the press box and restrooms. And so in October of 2018, Parks and Recreation requested the engineering department and the Public Works Department come review what they noticed was some soil erosion around existing stairwells. The two stairwells really in question were on the north end by the locker rooms where the teams come down, and also in the southwest corner. So we did end up at that time blocking off one stairwell in the stadium just because it had been undermined to a point where we felt like it wasn't safe. During this review, we also noticed that in the expansion joints, in the concrete bleachers themselves, there was some soil loss from underneath those bleachers. So we made a plan with Public Works to come back after football season, do a little bit more demolition, cut a couple holes around the stairwells as well as in the bleachers to see if we could see what was going on. In December 2018, we did finish that demolition. And what we found upon completion of the demolition, we found voids underneath the bleachers as well as underneath the stairwells and the slab between the press box and the bleachers, that area where the concessions would kind of queue up there on the west side. The voids we found are anywhere from about a foot deep. We did find one at the top of the bleachers that was approximately 7 feet deep. So it's a pretty large void underneath that slab. And they range in total volume. Some of them are only 3 feet wide. Some of them are 10, 12 feet wide. The two stairwells, we also found that those were compromised. And the overall size and the amount of voids that we have discovered raises significant questions about the overall structural condition of the stadium bleachers.
If I may interrupt you before you go to the pictures, these were voids underneath the concrete bleachers and the slab between the press box and bleachers that you could not see.
Correct.
Unless you, whatever you did, you drill holes to look to see. But I wanted to just make it clear that these were not just normal maintenance. It's like you can't see your plumbing underneath your house unless you go and drill a hole and look, or they could not see this.
And the actual...
Well, then...
Yeah, the actual concrete itself didn't show any signs that there was a void underneath. It looked just like the day it was put in. The only thing that clued us into it was the soil's coming out towards the bottom of the bleachers, and obviously it's coming from somewhere. So these are just a couple photos of the voids. This is at the top of the bleachers. The tape measure is kind of hard to read, but it's showing it's 6 feet from the top of the slab there. This is more towards the bottom of the bleachers. So there's larger voids at the top, smaller voids at the bottom is generally what we have found. These two pictures are actually running a tape measure side to side. And so this is what one of them, the void kind of continues for almost 12 feet side to side from the hole that we had cut in the bleachers. And so recommendations, we've worked with a contractor as well as one of the local engineering firms to kind of see what we can do to remedy this problem. The first thing that needs to be done is all existing joints, whether that's a crack that has formed over the years or an expansion joint that was put in to help control the cracking originally, they need to be resealed to prevent water infiltration. And it's about 10,000 linear feet of joints throughout the whole stadium. And what we found, the cause of these, for example, on the press box side, that large slab, water that was, anytime it would rain, the water wasn't getting to the drains. So it would just sit there on that slab, and over time, the only place it had to go was through the joints. And so all that quantity of water would get down through the joints into the soil, which is a real sandy soil, easily erodible soil out there. And so it would get in that soil and eventually find out another crack towards the bottom of the bleachers and would carry soil with it. So that'll be the first thing that needs to be done. After that, that large void that we did find, we would do some additional demolition up there around the press box, fill back in those large voids with some good backfill material. We'd re-pour the concrete, make sure it drains properly. The 2 stairwells that have been compromised, we'd also would replace those. To solve the problem in the bleachers, basically you'd start at the bottom, core holes, cut holes in it every however many feet, and pump in some flowable material, whether that's a foam type material that you might use on your house foundation, or a grout type material, something that will fill those voids in, and that'll save us from having to do any large scale demolition. We do estimate there's about 300 cubic yards of voids, because at every joint that we have found on both sides of the stadium, we have found some soil loss. Some places are worse than others, but we do feel this is kind of a typical issue around the stadium. Here I have the estimated cost is $500,000. I did receive a price yesterday that was approximately $300,000, just depending on what type of material and things like that we go with. So we're still trying to work out that detail. And funding's recommended from the OLOST infrastructure reserves. And again, the plan would be once we finalize our plan of attack, we would come back to here next month and ask for approval.
Thanks, Ryan. Councilor House?
Do we think these voids were, back 100 years ago, filled with dirt, and over time water's just washed it away?
Yes.
And that's what's happened?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Allen?
Well, along those lines, you mentioned sandy soil earlier. Is that the foundation of what we're looking at, or is that?
That's the type of material we found underneath the bleachers, and it's good material. It's compacted. We did cut holes towards the bottom where there's no voids, and the soil there's in great shape. It's just where water's found its way in is that the sandy material easily travels with the water, so it's made its way out.
Well, whatever material you use to fill the voids, and water leaks in again, I'm assuming that material will be somewhat waterproof, and it will redirect the leak to another point.
Yes, the material we will use, it'll be like
at that point.
more than likely it'll be a grout type material, so almost like a concrete, not quite as strong as concrete, but it'll be stronger than the soil that's there. But the big thing is sealing off the water. Normally in cases like this where you have large voids, it's because you find a pipe that has been demolished and hadn't been plugged right, or is just leaking water. We don't have that in this case. It's simply the water over the years infiltrating through all these cracks that has caused this issue. So by sealing all those cracks, we're going to take care of the water problem, so there won't be any more chance for erosion. And the cracks will be something that'll, we've talked to Parks and Rec about, it'll be something we inspect yearly, and, over 10 to 15 years, we'll have to look at replacing them, because that stuff does wear out over time.
So you're going to inspect the pipes. I noticed a couple of pipes. I don't know if they're drainage or not, but it may be conduit for something else.
Yeah, those
those
conduits were actually for the sound system when they did the 97 renovation. So they're actually used for irrigation today. So those 2 pipes in that photo were actually irrigation conduits. But yeah, we've checked the roof drains from the press box, all the storm drainage that's around, just to make sure that that's not our problem, and we haven't found any issues.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Thomas?
Mr. City Manager, is from the 2 presentations on the stadium and the jail, we're looking at $1.1 million out of the OLOS funds. Can any of this, are you going to bring this to us before the budget process?
We're going to bring it to you at the next business meeting.
And my question is, can any of this wait and be taken up during the budget process? This is, a significant amount of money out of that OLOS reserve, and I'm a little nervous.
Well, Mr. Mayor and Council, these are things that cannot wait. and I'll tell you why. You mentioned earlier, and the mayor visited the jail, and he knows the condition. We don't want outsiders coming in dictating to us and being involved for the next 20, 30 years. And so it's something that's urgent that we need to proceed with in terms of the jail. With the football stadium, we have community events to include the Muscogee County School District, and then we have the football classics, Tuskegee, Morehouse, and Albany, Fort Valley. And if we are going to make sure that this work is done, that it will not interrupt high school football and any regional playoffs, if it's not, to ensure that it won't impact Tuskegee, Morehouse, and Albany, Fort Valley, it's something that we really, and it's going to get worse if we don't address it now. I think you're going to, with rain and conditions, it's going to just get worse and cost more. And so I think there are things that we can't wait for the budget process. We need to do now.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may say it, this is, I've learned that it happened to another football stadium that we are familiar with, and so it was beneath the surface, and they had already been through this, and maybe it's something with football stadiums. I don't know, but I've been told that it occurred here locally with another football stadium. But the other thing I wanted to say is that if you don't know Ryan Pruitt, he replaced John Hutchison when we moved John Hutchison to Inspections and Codes, and he's another shining star that we have in this government. And we're going to let him give a class on PowerPoint presentations and how. Yeah, but he is a shining star, and you can see he's on top of this, and he's just good at what he does. And we've got a lot of hidden jewels and shining stars in this government that you don't get to see because they're behind the scene, and Ryan is one. But I want to thank him for all of his work, and he does an excellent job for us.
Thank you.
Good job, Ryan.
And so we will bring these back at the next business meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
The next topic that we have is Mott's Green update. We have our Director of Planning, Rick Jones, who's going to come and talk about that project that we've had much discussion before. And, you know, initially it had a bridge in it, and we took the bridge out. Council members went and toured the site and kind of got to see what the proposal is for that area down around the 14th Street Frank K. Martin pedestrian bridge. And so this is an update on Mott's Green.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mr. Mayor, members of council, good morning. It is still morning for the most part here. This is an update we promised we were going to do with you back in June or July of last year. So we're a little slow in getting this to you, but we want to bring it back to your attention again here. You know, we proposed this project back in 15. It's designed to rejuvenate and restore that last little area of the Riverwalk down there, right there at the pedestrian bridge itself. This is money that was authorized by council in 2016, with $800,000 of that coming from federal funds, and the other $200,000 coming from required local match. We went out and did an RFP on this. There we go. We went out and did an RFP on this. I've lost my train of thought here. I've lost my screen. Okay. Back in 2017, which Heck Bershaw was awarded. We did an update back in March of last year on this, and that's when we presented the idea of the total package, including the bridge and an observation deck. We then asked that we be allowed for you to come and tour the area with us, just so we could show you firsthand what it actually looks like and what we were trying to accomplish down there. And we did that back in June of last year. This, as you may recall, was with the original site plan in terms of the the bridge here, from this point, the renovation work and so forth, involved with all that, involved with everything else going on down there from that standpoint. Excuse me just a second here. So since that time, we also informed you about the requirement for additional archaeological and historical surveys, environmental and NEPA documents, design modifications, and so forth. A lot of this work came not because of what we were doing, but more or less what was required of us from the federal government and from GDOT itself in terms of trying to meet the project itself. We did, like I said, we did some design modifications as well in terms of actually removing the bridge itself and some other interpretive monuments at that point. We can do the conversion of the and the other thing that's come about now since we've had our last conversation is this little thing called lump sum versus line item deductions or what are cost estimates more than anything else, which is really this unit cost, what I'm really trying to say to you, this lump sum versus unit cost. We were doing everything pretty much, this sounds fairly simplistic, but it's not. Don't make it any more dramatic than I have to. But we were looking at everything doing in lump sum bid, what's it going to cost to do this? Well, GDOT came back to us and said, you really got to break this cost out for us now in terms of doing it on a unit cost basis. Again, that sounds real simplistic, but that means you really have to sit back and redesign the drawings themselves to fit that requirement. And this wouldn't have been a problem had we talked about this back in 2017. But GDOT came to us and right at the last moment, right where you got to submit the construction documents and said, you've got to change these documents to meet that requirement. Well, okay. So anyway, we've done that, and I'll show you the budget on here a little bit better as well. But as we talked about last year about this project, if we remove the bridge, there will be some cost savings. We said, yes, there will be. And we've taken those cost savings, though, and had to apply them to some of these requirements now that GDOT has made of us in terms of doing the environmental work and everything else that goes with it. We're still, though, within that $1 million range when we talked about initially about that. And we could have this project out to bid, we're that close now, by summer of this year in doing so. This is, again, what the existing area looks like right now on the screen in terms of Mott's Green and where its relationship to the pedestrian bridge and to the turnaround down there, the roundabout we had installed some time back as well. This is what we're talking about doing now to the Mott's Green area. As a reminder, this is what we're trying to achieve down here. For instance, this aligned rear wall, the 14th Street Bridge underpass. Let me go back to the previous slide. You can see here now, this is where the river walk itself goes now in terms of lining up. It really is offset from where it comes up underneath here at this point here. It really is offset at that point, so it makes it a little bit difficult to get through there. It's not impossible, but it just makes it a little bit difficult to deal with. This is what we're trying to achieve by allowing that flow of the river walk to actually come and connect at this point here again and tie back in at that instead of 25 feet or whatever to the east of the site itself. We're going to be adding landscaping and trees to the area. This area here, this is where we were talking about pretty much where the bridge was going to go, where the blue line is. There is now a retaining wall, basically, that stands about 5.5, maybe 6 feet at times, where it makes it difficult to actually see the river at that point. The idea is to actually still lower that so people have a better interaction with the river itself at that point in dealing with that. So that would actually be removing some of that railing and putting new railing on that site to make it actually more functional. There will be some cleaning and repairing of the existing monuments themselves, particularly these monuments right here, this one here, and this one here. As you recall, those of you who went down there with us on the tour, they're in pretty bad shape. They've just weathered over the years, and they really need to have some cleaning done to them from that standpoint as well. And then there's also some new historical signage that we want to put really in line up here with this purple area here. There's about 6 of them that will be double-sided that we want to share with the community and also enhance the historical quality of the area itself as we go along here. This is the historical interpretation. These are what the signs, monument signs will actually look like. Again, they'll be up there in that little arc area closest to the parking garage at Total System itself. They're designed really not only to capture the history of the area, but also to complement the Mott's House enhancement that was done a couple of years back as well. This is what some of the signs will look like. We'll kind of go through them kind of quick here on this. But they're there to emphasize what the history means of the river and what the area means to Columbus as a whole, and to remind visitors and to remind ourselves what all has actually taken place down there. This just, again, just gives you an idea of what that might look like involved with that. These are the areas, again, showing in this, with this really being, of course, this is the parking garage up here, and then these are the locations where these historical monuments will actually sit in reference to everything else up there. The other thing we want to really should point out to you as well, we don't really talk about it a whole lot in this presentation, but need to, and that's this green area in here. We want to go in there and kind of put some low-hanging lights for the most part, but also put some power to the area to make this more of a festive area, where you can have small concerts, you can have weddings there, things that would actually be beneficial to the area and make it a usable site involved with everything else going on along the river. This is a little bit more close of an example in terms of how the reference is, where those monuments will be placed. This is what the site looks like today in terms of, again, trying to clean the monuments up and so forth, and the area itself. The monuments would actually go in there and be placed, again, for this point. The festive area itself, the little green space area, we'd actually go in there and prune some of the trees up, kind of skinny them back a little bit, put some more grass in there, and make it more of an attractive area, more of an area that's inviting to the public to come and enjoy the area itself. This is our budget we're currently working under now. We have a basic cost of $100,000 to start off with. We've gone back and adjusted this budget with GDOT's blessings at the same time to incorporate some of these items in terms of the additional services of the environmental, the coordination, the project redesign, and like I said, this conversion of documents to a unit cost format. And then you can see what the cost is. We're projecting the actual construction cost to be a little over $700,000. That's dependent upon, of course, the bids we receive back, but that's what we're looking at. And we're still within that $1 million range now of about $991,000 to do the complete project. As I said, we are at the point right now of almost be at the point of ready to go forward with this once we have your authorization to proceed.
Okay. Councilor Woodson.
Can you go right back to the picture?
Which one would you like?
Not that one more. Right there, like where the stairs are coming through. I know when we did I'm sorry. I remember when we did the walkthrough, I was asking about possibility of seating or something like that. And I can see now with the revision you said that the stairs can be used that way. How are the stairs, the condition of them? Are they pretty good that where people will be able to sit? Because we did talk about a little stage and people can do a small concert, they can sit on the grass, or they can sit on those stairs. What are the conditions of those stairs?
Council Woods, if I recall correctly, the stairs are in good shape. They just need to be cleaned, and it may have some more to put back into some of them just to keep them in shape. The idea, though, is also it would be to kind of put something of a stage area down there that you could have performances or, like I said, weddings or other ceremonies down there that would allow you to do that. But this area itself kind of acts as a bowl shape that I think is a natural for these kind of activities to take place. And I think the stairs could work for seating. And of course, you invite folks to bring their own seating as well. Or if you had an event, they could also bring seating as well to the site. So I just
want to make sure that
Sure.
the stairs are in good condition.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're doing all the other modification that, we don't leave that out because that could be where someone can come and sit. And then I think that, I don't recall, but to make sure there's an area where someone who's like on a wheelchair or so can be able to go into that
Correct.
area in case there was an event due to the stage and the other.
The idea is to make sure that this site is functional, it is doable, it is ADA accessible. It has to be in that regard because, again, we're still utilizing federal dollars. Let's don't forget about that. As we said, I think we said this last year when we were talking about this, this is the last piece of the puzzle for the Riverwalk. For all practical purposes, the Riverwalk now at City Mills and at Bibb is complete. We need to have a celebration for that one fairly soon. This is the last piece, and when visitors come and when folks go down to the Riverwalk, we want to make sure that everything is in sight and is appealing to everybody who comes down there, and is inviting for them to actually enjoy what we've all spent money on over the last 20, 25 years. So we want to make sure it is doable when it's all said and done.
Charmaine, Councilor Crabb, sorry.
That's okay.
A little too familiar.
My question is about lining up the Riverwalk, when it's going under that bridge. I've been down there several times, and I don't see an issue with it the way it is now.
Councilor Crabb, we've had complaints about that for some time now, particularly not necessarily maybe the individual walkers, but we have events down there. I know we've had cycling events down there. They complain about it being offset and it messes up the riders. Same thing about those who are actually running down there for running events.
Okay.
That offset apparently is just enough to confuse folks, and it's not really at the same time totally inviting when you get down there. You kind of offset a little bit. I know it doesn't mean not seem
I wish
like
I had a
much, but
picture of it, but is it because, it kind of forks there? Is that what you're talking about, where it forks to where you stay on the Riverwalk, and then you can kind of go up parallel to the bridge to get up a little bit higher where that little, where to the left, to the bottom of the bridge, there's like a little a little triangle space right there. And you can kind of go up to the circle and the Riverwalk right there. So is that what you're talking about? That seems confusing.
Are you referring to this area up in here, or am I back down here?
Down at the bottom middle, the triangle below the bridge area.
Mm-hmm. Down here, down this area down here?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
That. So there's if I remember right, it's kind of like a Y in the road where the Riverwalk can continue, and then you can also go up, like some stairs up to that upper level. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's pretty much accurate from what I can tell. What I'm trying to allude to here, though, is this is the existing Riverwalk now today, and it really, you do have this part up here, you can go like that from that standpoint, or you can go this way. But the idea really is to make it flow a little bit better down there. While we're down there making the adjustments and the improvements to the area, we want to make sure we get the Riverwalk, because now this will actually line back up to where the Riverwalk goes up underneath the bridge.
Okay, I think I understand. So you're not changing the path under the bridge.
No, ma'am.
You're changing the path on Mott's Green.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
We
you
have to
answered
make
my
sure it lines
question.
up correctly for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that's what we're after. We're going to come back at the next council meeting and ask for your consideration to approve this so we can go forward with this project and get back to my budget here. So we can go ahead and get this project fully funded, take care of the last little bit of things we need to take care of, particularly this idea about unit cost, and then be ready to go out to bid, we hope, by summer this year.
It looks great. Plan does. Any questions or comments? Yes, sir. Councilor Allen.
On your budget sheet, it says cost and contingency. How much is the contingency?
It's usually 10%.
So that's set aside for future needs on that project?
That's in the event we have something that's come up. We try to take care of that. We set aside that much money at least in the event we have another issue.
Okay, is that held by the GDOT or is it held by the city?
No, sir, it's just in the budget itself. We control that aspect of it, so that when something comes up.
The funding for the project has been transferred to Columbus?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, we're in that. We'll still have to, let me be clear about this. If we go through the project just like do any other project, we'll have to make our payment up front, and we get reimbursed.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's a reimbursable
It's a
grant.
reimbursement program.
If we don't.
So the funds have not been transferred?
Right. If we spend it, then we can apply to be reimbursed for it. If we don't spend it, of course, we get what we spend, up to the $1 million.
So we can submit a contingency cost, and they will provide that to us.
In fact, they really do expect us to do that, and really do require us to do that. We right now, though, GDOT is committed to the $800,000 for this project. We just have to, like I say, pay as you go more than anything else.
And most all of our grants, just so that you know, are reimbursable grants, and that's why, and I'm not talking to you necessarily, but to the public, they are reimbursable grants, and that's why we have to have the capacity and the fund balance or reserve to spend the money that we can get reimbursed. Some of the smaller communities who don't have that capacity, they can't afford to accept the grant because they can't spend the money up front. They can get reimbursed, and so they can't apply for the grant. We're fortunate in that regard.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if there are no other questions, we'll be bringing that back, and we can go to the final update. And I don't mean to be calling on the mayor to do an update, but the mayor says put me at the end, and that's where I placed him where he wanted to be. So, Mr. Mayor, it's on you.
Not yet. I may be in a moment, but yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Yes.
Several of the things that we've talked about today, we've talked about taking out of the OLOS contingency and so forth. Next time when you come to us with the proposals for that, would you please bring a real good, complete breakdown of what is in the contingency fund, what is already committed from that, give us just a real clear picture of what kind of money we're talking about.
We'll do that, and in the future, what I'll do is do that first, and then go into, the updates, so that you'll know if we do that on the front end, that whether we have the capacity or where it's going to, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Certainly, we'll do that.
Okay. No, prior to the time I took office, and even subsequent to, I've had a lot of comments from people, not just within the government, but also without, about the public agenda. And I know there were some recommendations made before I got on council to go to 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and they looked at what other people did. And so the challenge, and the reason I didn't react immediately, is the challenge was to try to come up with something that kept in mind the primary focus, which is the citizens. It's being consistent so that, and being accessible to the folks that want to address their representatives here at the meeting. So a couple of, and it's important to remember, this doesn't require it doesn't require any kind of ordinance or resolution. It's simply the order of things within this council. So I didn't want to do it in a vacuum, so I think I sent all of you an email with just some thoughts. And the great thing about this is if they don't accomplish what we want these changes to accomplish, we can try something else or just revert to the way it is right now. But a couple of things that I'm asking you to consider is one, that the public agenda, people that appear on the public agenda be given 5 minutes. And that's the way I think it started about 7 or 8 years ago, and then it sort of grew into an additional 5 minutes. 5 minutes is more than what most municipalities allow. I think it's fair. They'll get a warning at 4 minutes to kind of wrap things up. I recognize that some people are just not going to, there's going to be some council interest, or there's going to be some folks that are unable to get through their thoughts in 5 minutes. So we'll allow them to come back at the end of the meeting for an additional 3 minutes to wrap up anything or to answer something or say something they may have forgotten to bring up at that time. The other thing that we're going to try to do is we're going to work with the clerk's office on the intake when people call in to get on the public agenda. One of the things we'll do from the mayor's office is to contact them, not to dissuade anybody from appearing. We want anybody that wants to address their elected officials to do so. But there may be some things that we can steer them towards, or we can call 311 or work with the city manager to try to reconcile any issues they have before. And it may preclude them from having to appear before council to ask for that. But also, we'll try to determine if it's something that council has purview over. Is there something that council can accomplish? That'll go on the public agenda. If they have an event that they want to invite council to, or if they have something they'd like to promote, we'll schedule them at the very end of the meeting for 3 minutes. And I've actually talked with Mike King, and what we'll do is he can edit that out and run that multiple times during the week to help gain them some additional publicity. And what it will do for, I think, this body, for the council, is allow the individuals that have to get to a job at the end of the meeting, they can leave when that's going on and then view it later when it's aired on CCG TV. And lastly, I'm going to recommend a change that anybody that wants to appear before this council and bring forth some kind of issue that they'd like to have addressed should be able to do that. However, it doesn't serve any purpose to hit the same topic every single meeting, because if we can do something about it, then council will make a decision whether or not to do it. If it is not within the auspices of what this council can do, and it's really just not moving us closer to a resolution. So my recommendation is that anybody that wants to come bring an issue before council has the right to do so, but they can only talk on that same topic once every 60 days. So if nothing is resolved, or if it can't be resolved and they still want to talk about it, they can, but they'll have to wait 60 days to come back and bring that same topic up. And that will be kind of regulated from this seat. The mayor will try his best to keep the individuals on point as far as what they have turned into the clerk that they'd like to talk about. But I don't think any of these are unfair to the citizens. In fact, I think it may actually help them accomplish what their goal is, and that's to be heard by the elected officials a little bit easier. And I think it also takes into account that we want to get, this body also has to work on the city manager's agenda and the clerk's agenda as well. Anyway, any questions or any thoughts? There are several here. Hang on, Councilor Barnes.
Overall, I like the suggestions. Initially, you are correct that the public agenda was 5 minutes. And I like the fact that if they can't get it in 5 minutes, they have the option of waiting and finishing up at the end. I especially like the fact that if there's any event going on, that extracting that out, and Mike King and them are very good at running things that are of knowledge to the community, of running it. So I like the fact of giving that segment a little bit more exposure throughout the week. I think it's a huge benefit for organizations that may have something important to say. Overall, I think that we afford the citizens, I'm glad we have the public agenda, because it does a lot of, we've gleaned a lot out of just the suggestions, and I like the fact of having the clerk or council forward information to you, because a lot of times it can be solved, whatever their problem is, from the mayor's office. So overall, I do like the suggestions that you email.
Thank you, sir. And I think that what's important about people who want to invite us to events, there's been talk about putting those on the proclamation meeting. The problem with that is sometimes the dates don't line up. They might have something that's going to roll around before that proclamation meeting. So we want to make sure they have a chance to get it out to folks. Councilor Woodson?
Just want to be clarified with the portion of the invitations to events and is that going to be at the end of our meeting or during the public agenda, and then we'll extract it at the end again?
It'll be at the end of the meeting. So in other words, we'll schedule those. We'll tell them they don't have to show up at 9 o'clock or at 5:30. We'll kind of coach them into when they can arrive so that they don't have to sit through the whole meeting.
Great. That's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's a good idea.
Councilor Thomas?
The only thing I would ask you to just tuck in the back of your mind, the 60 days, if I come to the council meeting, the first meeting in January, then the second meeting January, the first meeting February, the second meeting February, the first meeting March is about 56 days. and it would seem that maybe, just some kind of accommodation there so that I could come the first meeting in January and the first meeting in March. That's just a thought, and this is your rules, so you can be, as flexible on that 60 days. But it would seem that would give us 2 months, if you will.
That's
the
fair.
same kind of thing.
We could say 2 months, and then we could just, if it's going to miss it by a day or two, the idea is not to hold anybody to a hard, fast rule of
Yeah.
60 days as much as it is just to make sure that what they're bringing to us is something, A, we
Right.
have purview over, and B, there has been a decision by this body to go ahead and act on it.
And I do like the fact that you started this out by saying, if this doesn't work, we can always go back in and tweak it and do something else to it.
Absolutely. This is, the primary objective here is that the citizens have an opportunity to access their legislative representatives. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Councilor Allen?
Well, I was going to say, I know some communities have once a quarter that you can come back and revisit the same issue, but either way you want to do it's fine with me, but I would be okay with once a quarter as well.
Okay. All right. Well, Councilor Crabb?
I just wanted to emphasize that meeting at the public agenda is not the only way that the citizens can access us. We are very accessible through our cell phones, our emails, texts. I've been receiving them already. And in some ways, it's more efficient and more effective by reaching us that way, because then we can pass that information on, like the email I received this morning, then I was able to pass it to those that could actually get something done. Usually what I've found when citizens come to council, they're left, with kind of empty-handed, because then we have to go through the process of getting those involved to fix the problem or to address the issue. So I'd like to encourage all the citizens to contact us by email, by text, by telephone also.
That's a great point. And I think the reason for contacting their representatives, I think many people do that. And of course, there's 311 as well. They can put it in an order by dialing 311 anytime they want. But there are a lot of issues, and I acknowledge that there are some issues that not only they want to, but deserve to be aired in front of this body collectively and broadcast to the citizens at home. So we recognize that that's important on occasion, and we don't want to deny anybody the opportunity to do that. Well, we'll begin this, I think, the second meeting in February. So that gives us time to continue to solicit input from council. And it gives us time to evaluate whether 60 or 90 days is a more appropriate time period. But I think certainly we'll begin with the 5 minutes on the, I think it's the 12th of February. It'll be our first business meeting? Is that right?
13th, I believe.
13th? Okay. Whatever the first business meeting is, that's when we'll begin that, and we'll work with the clerk's office to begin to try to estimate within reason when they need to arrive. And the one thing I will mention, folks, it is the 12th. Folks have mentioned that they'd like to see that be the first thing out of the chute. And our challenge with that is anytime we have something on first reading, we advertise those, and we are required by law to have them as close to the advertised time as possible. So that's the only reason we put the public agenda at the end of the city attorney's agenda. So.
And actually, there's an ordinance that references that as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? All right, there's a motion and a second. Councilor Barnes.
Many of you have maybe read in the paper about the local NFL players that are taking a group of high schoolers to the Super Bowl. And if I'm not mistaken, some of those players are homegrown. They went to Mother Mary Mission. Well, on the 8th of February, Mother Mary Mission, in their gym, they're going to have a banquet to recognize, I think, Otis Sistrunk. Give me a minute. Otis Sistrunk, Frank Brown, and Coach Oliver Davis, who are former NFL players, and I think 4 other NFL players as well. It's going to be February 9th at 7 o'clock at Mother Mary Mission Gym. And if there's anyone interested, I don't have now the point of contact, but they can call me and I can connect them. So that's February 9th at February the 9th, yes. At, I think it's at 7 o'clock.
Okay, great. All right, we had a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned.